Please don't air any of this, Brad.
All right, we ready? You hitting it? Tell me when we're rolling. No, we've been rolling. God damn.
We're Googling over here.
All right.
To nerd sports now, people.
Exactly.
Look out. Do you fear death?
Oh, one of the greatest lines of all time.
I've got a job to it. I've got a job to it.
Kind of like whistles at her, so Dad looks over and the guy's going. And Dad's like, I got the fuck out of there. I was like, oh man, you didn't partake? I thought that was part of the mountain biking community, that y'all just went out there and had sex together in your tight shorts. But literally making me 30 sides of red sauce. He just takes it back up.
So that's what I was doing wrong the first time.
that's what you were doing wrong.
Big Pharma's turning the frogs gay, and it's coming after your kids.
And they're going to make them incredibly happy.
Infowars.com.
Listened to so much. Are you...
So you see these podcasts where they'll have like a camera, say there'd be one on me, there'd be one on you, then you got your wide shot, wherever that is. Is somebody manually facilitating that, or can you do it to where like it picks up an audio and it automatically switches?
No, well, I'm sure you can. I don't.
You manually do it.
I manually do it.
But you have the ability. And
I'm assuming that you have the ability to manually do it, to automatically do it if you set up had the right software and all that. But
with how many cameras do you use right now? So what we're talking about? Well, just break down what we're talking about real quick.
Yeah.
Your setup.
So I do broadcast for my church, City Point Church, and for us we run 4 cameras. 2 of those have cam ops, and 2 of them are fixed cams. 3 of the cameras are actually hardwired into my system, and 1 of them is wireless into the system. Okay. We use a multitude of systems, to be quite honest. We everything comes into a Blackmagic ATEM, and from there we then send that to OBS. OBS then sends it out to the world.
So OBS isn't getting the direct feed. You're kind of going.
Yeah, OBS is getting what's coming out of the ATEM.
Right.
That's also where.
And describe an ATEM. What is an ATEM?
Well, ATEM is just that's the name of. I don't even know what ATEM stands for, but that's just what it's. It's a Blackmagic ATEM, and the one we're using is a mini extreme ISO. To be quite honest, it's got a lot of things that are close to actual production quality. I mean, if you look at what we spend on it, it's much cheaper than buying professional production quality stuff.
Do y'all have a lot invested into the equipment, or did you get it relatively inexpensively?
Considering what the power is, I mean, we're getting a lot of benefit for relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
I mean, you look at, if I was to try to do this and use production quality, I would be looking at probably $10,000 to $15,000 worth of equipment.
But how
just
big
for the
ATEM?
ATEM?
But how big of a jump between what you're doing now and that? Is it worth that?
It's
price?
not.
It's
not.
not.
No, I mean, I think we're probably in for, and again, this has been a few years. I think we're in for about $1,500 on the equipment.
Isn't that crazy?
And that's, I mean, considering that a low-end professional broadcast is going to be at least $10,000, and I've got 80% of what they can do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
Well, I almost feel like in today, you're seeing, you got your mainstream media, right?
Yeah.
You got everybody's behind a desk, and the production value is great. You've got your teleprompters, and there's no headphones or anything. It looks nice, but then you go to a podcast, right? And it's guys in jeans and T-shirts just hanging out. Well, their content is good. It might not look quite like that, but what I'm starting to see now is some of these big podcasters. The bigger they get, the more they're trying to emulate.
They are.
Kind of that.
And honestly, you could take the setup that we use at our church and take that ATEM and literally do a podcast with it. And it's just like 4 buttons is all you really would have to use.
So when you're switching cameras, so if you've got, how many you say you had? 4?
I've got 6 technically.
Okay.
4 cameras and 2 computer inputs that have lyrics and images and things like that.
And so it's just at a push of a button you can say.
I can say what am I seeing?
From.
Yeah. What am I looking at this moment in time? So, or what I'm looking at, but what's the world looking at?
Right.
So,
right. And you said y'all streamed Facebook
Live and YouTube. Yeah.
Right now
it's where we stream to. So
nice.
with the add-in that we have on OBS, I think I actually can add as many as 4 additional
Right.
streams, but we don't have anywhere else that our church streams to, so we stream to
Right.
Facebook.
Well, there's so many. It almost gets overwhelming because I'm wanting to get into the clips piece because I
Yeah.
mean, eventually you're gonna when you got a 2-hour podcast, nobody's gonna watch
2 hours.
2-hour podcast unless you're already plugged into
Yeah,
it,
no,
right?
no,
So if you
you've
want to
gotta-
gain a bigger audience, you need clips.
Yeah.
And so with the limited time I've got, it's like the 10-15 minute clip is a real good one, but the 30-second clip is probably more valuable because that is just
and
quick.
that's honestly, it's what I like about our ATEM that we have set up, because when I hit the record button, so it records to a hard drive, all of the feeds record.
Oh,
So I
if
get-
you wanted to go back and play
and
around,
edit it. I can edit it.
You could intercut however
So
you
whatever
wanted.
whatever I'm actually doing live, if I go back later and say I don't like what I did, I can go back. Because it's all time stamped.
Yeah,
And it will literally switch.
That's cool.
At the moment that I want it to, if I've missed it by half a second, or even if I've missed an entire shot altogether, because in my brain I'm looking for this shot, but there's a better shot over here that I just didn't plan on.
Right.
So because my cam ops are, I mean, great. They have an eye. So
right.
And
But
sometimes
how many
it's-
people are actually involved in creating the production?
Oh man, for I mean, it depends on what you call creating the production. Because in our church, I mean, you've got the entire band, which is anywhere from 1 person up to this last week I had 5. So the band is anywhere from 1 to 5. You've got a AV person who's running the slides in there. You've got a sound person who's running the sound.
Okay.
You've got a minimum of 2 cam ops, and then you've got me who's
Well,
doing.
you said some of the cams are fixed.
Yeah, right now we have 2 fixed cams and 2 cam ops.
Okay.
One of those fixed cams has the ability to become a cam op, but we just don't have that right this second. We needed.
And how long have y'all been doing this at this level?
Honestly, we didn't start streaming until COVID. COVID, we were doing some recording, but when we first started, I mean, before we got into this live stream stuff, we were literally a video camera at the back of the church,
Just kind of fixed,
and
recording
you just
it and-
recorded it and then put it on Facebook or YouTube YouTube. I think is where they put it at.
Right.
And it was just literally a feed,
Which is fine, that
directly
works.
from the audio was a feed from the audio
Yeah.
board to the camera, and and then COVID hit, and we kind of got forced because we got shut down. They then started doing a lot of filming just in a studio effectively. Started doing that, and then once we got back to actually in person, we continued to stream it, and it just started off with a small setup, and we have grown since 21 when we started going back into real in person. I mean, there was like 9 months where we quit seeing everybody, so
that was a wild time. Well, this is more of a hobby, obviously. It's not what you do. You want to tell people what you do.
Yeah. For me,
IRL.
Let's say for me, this streaming stuff is just kind of something I do on Sundays. It's my quote unquote Sunday job.
Right.
Monday through Friday, I'm actually a psychiatrist. I work in the mental health field and own my own practice and kind of do that. So.
Yeah, and this kind of feels like Pod 2.0 because we had a really good conversation a few weeks ago. We just didn't have cameras on.
We've had a couple of them.
Stuff. Yeah, we have. So sorry for repeating some of this. For the
it'll be
audience,
all right. We're good. So,
how did you get what made you want to get into that field to begin with?
Actually, it was an accident. I had zero intention of going into psychiatry, to be quite honest, Brad. I mean, when I went into med school years and years ago, I mean, at this point in time, I got in 2005. No, I started med school in 01. And so when I got into med school, I was going to be an ER doctor. I mean, that's what I wanted to do.
What year were you born? I was trying to establish.
Sorry, I was born in 79.
79. Okay, so you're.
I graduated high school in 97.
2 years older than me. I'm trying to get a.
No. So I graduated high school in 97, college in 01.
Okay.
But when I went into college or into med school, I was going to be an ER doctor.
Okay.
Growing up,
So you didn't have this deep, I need to understand the human psyche.
No,
kind of-
I was.
It wasn't like
so
that.
for me, actually, growing up, my dad's been part of the fire department since I was born. I mean, my dad was probably 16, 17 when he joined the department.
Okay. Up here?
No, this was
Or
in
is this-
Central Arkansas, back home.
Okay. And where did you grow up again?
I grew up outside in Ward, just outside
Okay.
of Cabot. So,
Okay.
so Dad was actually part of the fire department, and basically that's all I ever knew. And so I got up to 13, 14 years old and said, you know what, I want to join the fire department and be part of the junior department. And
Yeah.
then that progressed into actually full-fledged firefighting for a while,
Right.
and volunteer obviously is what that small town is. So, but because of it, I got into EMS, and I really enjoyed the ER kind of side of it. And I was going to be an ER doctor, and nothing personal, but I'm not a smart enough doctor to be an ER doctor. You got to be a pretty darn smart guy. And when I say pretty darn smart, you got to be the top 20% of your class.
Really?
Which means that of the general population, you're like the top 0.1%.
Right.
To be.
Is that just because there's so many scenarios and you're under such a quick
It's
time crunch?
it's just
Save
how it
people?
functions.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make 100% sense, but it just
Okay.
how it kind of falls out that usually, if you look at it, it's about the top 5% of the population that goes to med school, and then out of that, the top 20% of that is going to be where your ER doctors are going to come from. So I was not
where's
in
the
that,
big
so.
money in the medical field? Is that surgery?
man.
Is that
Honestly, probably the biggest money right now is in neurosurgery.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
Yeah.
And it depends on where you're at. I mean, if you're out in Beverly Hills, the big money is going to be in plastics.
well, sure.
So I mean, it just depends.
Like, are they using? And I'm not very educated on this,
Yeah,
but
no.
I've heard that they're using some kind of robots to perform surgeries now. Is that accurate?
there are actually different types of surgeries that can be done through robotics.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I can't sit here and tell you all about
Yeah,
them because
yeah.
that's not my specialty. But
It just seems so wild. Like we're
yeah.
just in. I mean, how many people were talking about and really engaging in AI 5 years ago?
I don't know very many that were. I mean,
It was science
It was
fiction.
science fiction
It was
5
science
years ago,
fiction.
and now it's
we're seeing Trump saving kittens out of burning buildings. It's nuts.
it's crazy. Yeah.
It's wild.
I mean, for me, I use AI to write a lot of like proposals. That's how I.
So you're fully on.
Oh,
using
I
it now.
use it. Yeah, no.
So describe that process. So what you just give it a prompt and you say,
So I just the other day I was someone needed a what they call a letter of medical necessity for one of the treatments that we offer, and I was like, you know what, I don't have time to sit down and look up all the data so I can actually write this letter, and so I asked it to actually just create the letter and told it what I wanted. Just I need a letter of medical necessity for this particular service with this many citations for this particular diagnosis, and
wait, it cites?
yeah, it was able to cite
It'll
for me.
do so.
Yeah. And I quickly, of course, it tells you to go back and check, and I always check to make sure they're valid.
Yeah, sure.
So I went back and checked the citations, but it was faster than me looking it
How do
up.
these professors catch kids who are doing this now?
There's actually services that'll actually do that. So
I've heard of that too.
The problem with the services are that they're not 100% accurate either because
Right.
they're AI driven.
Exactly,
Which is kind of funny. They're using an
it's
AI driven service to try and fix this whole problem, and it just doesn't work. So
Have you played around much with like image generation?
briefly, just for personal, but
Yeah.
I have
We'll
yet
say
to-
it's all
yeah,
been
I-
personal for me.
Yeah, I've not ever had any success with it really kind of creating a whole lot of what I like. I mean, I think I've managed to make one image that I thought was even remotely worthwhile. Yeah.
OpenAI's got some real fun. Like you can set the adherence to high or low to give it more freedom of
what you want.
interpretation
Yeah.
or whatnot. But I mean, the kids, that's fun. We'll just sit in here sometimes and just give it prompts just to see what it'll come up with.
See, I didn't know OpenAI would actually do images.
Yeah,
so.
we can maybe later. We'll do some. It's fun.
Yeah,
I'll show you what it's like. It's really cool, but it's just a little off. It's like there might be a sixth finger.
Well, like I say, AI is pretty bad about hands. If you actually ever go back and look, AI does not do hands well. There's always like the hands are like blurred together, or there's six fingers or three fingers, or
there. We had one that was supposed to be a gunslinger holding a beer, riding a horse, and it he had a beer and then a second hand coming out
Yeah.
with a gun.
It's just kind of weird how
It's
they.
just a little wonky.
Yeah, so it's still proof that AI is not where it needs to be.
But
But
But how quickly will it get there? And what
Well-
kinds of things? What is the ultimate potential of AI? Do you think?
unfortunately, I think I really do think AI can take over the world if we're not careful.
Yeah.
I mean,
What, like, if you're on the board, and it's not like there's just one AI program,
right? There's
dozens
thousands,
or thousands. I mean, you've got OpenAI, you've got Facebook's got its
Oh,
Meta
yeah,
AI,
Meta and Google
Grok
and-
on X. There's multiple AIs.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of them.
Like-
and those are just the big ones. That's not talking about the little ones.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, we're
private
talking.
businesses are writing their own AI programs.
I
now.
mean, again, I'm not trying to change complete subjects, but looking at AI, I'm using an AI to write my notes for me at work for my longer notes. Literally, instead of having someone sitting in my office with me typing and scribing for me, I now have an artificial intelligence that is writing those notes.
So how do you prompt that? Is it basically like, because it's like voice recognition
Yeah,
software?
it's voice recognition software. I literally I set my phone on my desk and I say record,
Yeah.
and it records the conversation that we're having between me and a patient. And at the end of it, I hit done, and the AI actually generates
Transcribes.
it generates it into a relatively reasonable note. I
Oh,
mean,
so it's not just transcribing.
it's not just
summarizing.
No, it's summarizing.
Jeez.
And there's I know of at least 7 different companies that are doing that in the medical field.
Right.
Just to take and listen to the generative data that is happening in a room and summarizing it into a summary of what's happened.
Are you a sci-fi reader? Do you read?
I don't read much, just in
Not a
general.
big reader.
I'm not a big reader.
My grandma got me into science fiction when I was probably 10 or so. So you're talking about early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah.
And of course, the first stuff she would introduce me to was stuff she grew up with from the 50s.
No.
And it's wild how many things from 1950s science fiction and 60s science fiction that have come to be. And I don't know if that's life imitating art or...
Well, and that's the hard question is, what is it? Is it life imitating art, or is it
Right.
Someone somehow has some insight? But I think it's more life imitating art, to be quite honest. But I mean...
Maybe, yeah. Or just necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
And if we
I
need
mean-
these things, but it seemed pretty convenient in those books. But also, the thing that scares me is that usually it was a moral lesson about giving over all your your power to the AI, and it realizes
I mean,
that you're not really
You're talking
needed.
about Terminator. You're talking about Star Trek. You're talking about
Skynet. That's all I could
Skynet,
think
yeah,
about. When this
Skynet
was-
work, yeah.
The Terminator thing is
yeah.
that you listed first was the biggest fear
that's
for me.
and that's still the biggest fear that honestly I have with AI.
I think that's most people. Though.
It is, it reads so much
Yeah.
that are we going to end up where it actually tries to rule us and take us over?
Would it even need us though? Look,
It wouldn't need us, no. You get into,
But without
then
us-
you get into the Matrix kind of concepts where
Yes.
suddenly humans are nothing more than a power source.
right.
I mean, so it's kind of,
But we've come so far in just, I'd even say the last 8 months.
yeah,
Certainly a year.
definitely.
Where we were
yeah.
a year ago and where we are
I mean,
today.
What is it? It's a doubling of data a doubling
it's
every
like exponentially
every 2 years now. I think we have a
double.
doubling.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
It's when we started the idea that we were here, and doubling of that's here. But I mean, when you double this, it's
yes.
I mean,
So it's an
we have
exponential
it's
rise
ridiculous
in all of that.
I mean, when computers started, the folks that created IBM, when they created the computer, they thought that worldwide, the best outcome that they were hoping for was 50 to 100 needs for their computing software, for their computers.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was all they were actually looking for.
That's
Was like they
wild.
thought that 50 to 100 entities would need this, mostly governments.
Wow.
I mean,
Mostly
now,
government. Isn't that nuts?
now in a general home, you've got no less than 50 to 100 devices
Yeah.
that are attached to a one of these things. I mean, crap. I'm thinking here in this
wild.
room. I mean, we've got
Right.
at least 2 phones. We've got a TV. We've got at least
Video
one
game
computer.
systems
Video
are
game
now-
system. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can count just in
The
my
TV's
vision.
a smart TV.
Yeah,
which
1,
is
2,
connected
3,
to the
4,
computer.
5, 6, 7,
Yeah.
8. I mean, 9 things here just in this one
Yeah.
spot that are based off of a computer.
Right.
And again, when it first started, it was the concept that there may be 50 to 100 of these that need to
Right.
be worldwide.
It's cool. I
Yeah.
mean, as somebody who's interested in progress and technology,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like the farther we go down this road, the more fucked we are when it goes away.
Well,
You know what I
Well,
mean?
I was earlier before I came here. I actually was over at one of the local craft breweries, and
Yeah.
for about 15 minutes, maybe not even that long, maybe 5 to 10, their internet went down, and their
Could they
entire
do orders?
They couldn't do orders. They couldn't take a credit card. They
Transactions?
couldn't.
Yeah.
The TV was showing the particular game that was on at the time.
Right.
I mean, everything basically went dead for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
When my office, I mean, I have an entire binder that is nothing but what happens when the technology fails
Yeah.
at the office.
Yeah.
How do we continue in a technologyless
Right.
situation?
I wasn't in the workforce when the internet came out, so I don't know what it was like, but I definitely remember a pre-internet society, as you do. I think
Yeah.
95 was when we got our first family computer that had internet.
I was probably a little bit younger than that, but I honestly, my family kind of was willing to kind of push the bounds for
Sure,
me.
sure.
So we probably actually got our first computer that had internet access a couple of years before that.
Okay. But
and
you,
it may be
you
wrong- I
still
may be wrong.
remember a world without it.
Oh no, I completely remember.
And
World
it was
without
such
it.
a drastic. I mean, I remember at the time. So at 95, I would have turned 14 that year. So
Yeah.
it was probably 13 when we got it. I remember thinking, this is never going to take off. It takes forever to get online.
Yeah.
I can get kicked off when somebody calls the phone. It was it was so cumbersome. I thought, this is never going to work. And now I can't even imagine a world without it.
Oh no, I don't know that I could function without a computer anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I still remember when three-way calling was a thing,
A
and
new thing.
a new thing.
I remember when it was
And
cool because it was
well,
new.
I remember that me and one of my friends, we actually decided we were going to see how many people we get on one call, and we were in 6th grade, probably 5th grade.
Okay.
So three-way calling was relatively new at the time. It was 5th, 6th grade for us.
Yep.
And we decided we were going to figure out how many folks could we get on one call at one time.
Yeah.
And so I called him, and then I had three-way calling. He didn't.
Right.
So we said, okay, who do we know that has three-way calling?
Right.
And we just kept going around the circle.
Yeah.
And I think we ended up with something like 18 people.
So you were doing Zoom meetings back in the 90s, basically.
well, yeah.
Yeah, without video, but
without
yeah,
video,
you-
but we just did it just
Same
because it
difference.
was the fact that we wanted to see what we
Just
could
see what
accomplish.
you
See
could
what
do.
we could accomplish. We were a bunch of young kids that
Yeah.
just wanted to see. And at the same time, one of my good friends, you would call her, and it may be her neighbor 3 doors down that answered the phone because there was a party line.
The party line.
And
yeah.
they would have to walk down 3 houses to
Wild.
say, "Hey,
Yeah.
Randy's on the phone. Do you have time to talk to him?"
Right.
And then they would get on and wait for the neighbor to get back and hang up. And
Yeah.
about
I
half
never
the time,
had a party line.
I never personally had a party line. I just had a couple of friends. That
Yeah, I
had
knew a
them.
bunch of people that had them and talked about them, but that's why. Like, I just didn't even know they existed until all these people were telling me
Yeah,
about
well, see,
them.
I
But-
lived out in a spot that I lived in town, but we were such a small town
Right.
that literally the county was where party lines occurred. And so it was lots of people that I knew that still lived out in the county.
Yeah.
That went to school with me, and they had party lines.
When did you move to Northwest Arkansas?
2010.
Okay.
So my history was I went from Central Arkansas to Northeast Arkansas up to Jonesboro. Did 4 years up there for college. Went back to Central Arkansas for med school. Then I went to Kentucky. I moved to Lexington for 5 years. And then from Lexington, moved back to Arkansas.
What's Kentucky like? I've never been to Kentucky.
You know, Honestly, if it wasn't for my wife, I would not have come back from Kentucky.
Really?
Yeah, I would still be in Kentucky if it wasn't for her. I loved it. It was take the natural beauty that is Northwest Arkansas and multiply it by 10, in my opinion. It would
No kidding.
Yeah. The other part though is I felt like there's a lot of sprawl here already. Kind of this, even in Northwest Arkansas, you have to get ways out.
Yeah.
I mean, in Lexington, it didn't feel like you had to go that far.
Right.
I mean, you literally could take and go 5 minutes out of town and find just these wide open, beautiful spaces.
Yeah.
Now, I'll also say that people had way too much bloody money to deal with, because there were horse barns that were multi-million-dollar horse barns. I mean, some of these horses had houses that were nicer than...
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Kentucky's famed for
for the horses, yeah.
the horse thing. Yeah.
You know, oddly enough, I spent 5 years in one of the 2 big horse tracks in Kentucky.
Yeah. Did you
And
go to
I
races?
never saw a race.
Never did, huh?
5 years, I never saw a race. Even though our residency sent people had a resident day every
Right.
year, I volunteered to stay and work at the hospital.
So
'cause
no
I had-
interest in the horse racing.
I haven't. No.
Is that gambling too? You're not a gambler?
No, I'm a gambler.
You are a gambler.
I have no problem with the gambling side of it. It's just that for whatever reason, it wasn't my idea of a fun time.
See, that's the only vice I think I don't have is gambling.
Oh, really?
I've got the rest of them,
well,
but that one I missed out on. I really wanted to collect them all, but I just can't get into it.
I don't know.
I'm too cheap.
I go into gambling in a weird way. I like to gamble,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I don't gamble more than I know that I can afford.
Well, that's
So,
responsible
uh,
gambling. It's like drink
but-
responsibly, gamble responsibly.
Yeah, but not
Don't
everyone-
spend more than you can lose.
Not everyone does that though. When
Oh,
they
I
gamble.
know.
Most
That's why it's
gamblers
easy.
have a problem with it.
I look at gamblers the way probably most people look at me,
Yeah.
being an alcoholic.
Yeah, well,
It's like,
I mean,
hey, why does this guy have such a problem? Like, why do you spend more money than you can afford to lose?
yeah.
It's just,
I mean,
man, you hear so many horror stories. I mean, people betting mortgages and
well, I
just
like to cruise, and there's always casinos on cruise ships. But I was actually reading on one of the boards today, and someone was asking, what happens if you gambled more than you can afford? Are they going to let you off the ship?
walk the plank. Then we need to bring that back.
There actually have been a lot of people who've made that comment
Have
lately.
they?
that you only bring that back. Walking the plank needs to be a new thing, or a recurring thing again.
Yeah.
So, but no, it was just one of those that they had admitted that they kind of got in over their heads. They actually somehow the system let them charge more than their credit limit on their credit card, and they were trying to figure out how they were going to get off the ship. So
That's a scary one, man. At least, man.
when
I
we
don't
go,
know, I'm not a
we carry,
wild man,
We carry
that's-
cash, and whatever the cash is gone, it's gone.
Yeah. I just can't imagine, like even the worst bender alcohol, it's like, oh, I did something stupid and I feel like shit, but I didn't lose the house.
Yep, very
you
much
know?
so.
It just seems like the stakes can get so high, and I try and put myself in that mindset of the gambler, and it's like, okay, well, I just need to win it back. I get it.
I need to get.
I
need
just
to get
need
back.
to win back where I was.
Yeah.
And then I'll stop, and I definitely
How
get
do
it.
How do I get back to where
How do I
I'm
get
at,
back
at
to
bare?
zero?
Yeah. How do I get back to even?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's just, I definitely understand how people can get pulled down that road, but man, it's just, you hear stories of people losing everything.
Oh yeah, it happens way too often that people lose all of what they have. And
Do you remember when the poker craze hit in the early 2000s? So you had
Yeah.
the movie Rounders. Have you ever seen it?
I've never seen that one.
So
though.
Matt Damon and Ed Norton.
Okay.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Great movie. Of course, poker themed. And then right around that time, I don't know if it was because of that movie or if that movie was a symptom of poker getting bigger, but like I remember the movie first, and then poker all of a sudden ESPN's covering it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I think it makes you feel like you're in control.
Mhm.
Like, I can beat this game. This
Yeah.
isn't just random. This is, and there is a skill involved.
There's a skill
in
to
poker,
it. Yeah.
certainly.
No.
But it's still gambling.
It is.
You can make every right move
Mhm.
statistically,
on the board and
Yeah.
still lose your
Still
ass.
lose, yeah, because it's
Somebody gets lucky.
Yeah, someone gets lucky. Someone decides that they're going to bluff you out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have anything that's worth a darn, but
Right.
they still bluff it out.
Well, perfect example. I was in a tournament back when this was going on in the early 2000s. You had a lot of restaurants, bars, sports bars that would have poker tournaments. Of course,
Yeah.
it wasn't legal in Arkansas, so it was more like
Yeah.
you'd win a prize for
Yeah, you get a prize,
But I was at a final table. It's 4 people left. I was in second position, but I think the dealer was to my right, so I was the first one to bet. I had pocket kings.
yeah,
I checked. Next guy goes down, is up. He goes all in. He was the chip lead.
yeah,
So you had fold, fold. I'm like, unless he's got aces, which is
statistically small.
statistically very small, I've probably got a better hand.
Yeah,
So I called. So we flop him over. I've got kings. He's got jacks.
yeah,
Boom, boom, boom. No help. Jack comes down on the turn. He wins it.
yeah,
You know?
Yeah.
Statistically, I made the right call. I'd make it every time.
right.
But he caught the jack.
he got lucky. I mean,
You know?
with pair of pocket kings, I mean, I wouldn't not call it.
Yeah. And as a 22, 23-year-old kid, I was smarter than the game. Like, I've got this guy. And then it took that to realize, oh, this really is gambling.
Yeah, no, it's
Absolutely is.
pure. I mean, pure and simple. The statistics said that you were
Right.
probably 85, 90% likely to win that hand.
Sure.
But
And the skill in poker isn't necessarily even calculating odds.
No.
A lot of it, especially in-person poker, because online is a completely different game. But it's reading people. It's you know, does this person talk more when, you know, that's kind of why just a random table's kind of weird, because you don't know
you
people.
don't know who you're playing with. Yeah.
Whereas if you play with the same group of guys, or even like my kids are all you know, I can figure out Max. I know Max's tells.
You know Max's tells.
You know, I
and all
know
that.
Walt's
You know
tells
Walter,
or
and-
Theo's
yeah,
tells, and you know, and you coach him on a little bit. It's like, hey, you know, every time you get a good hand, you do this, and
Yeah, Marshall doesn't listen to that stuff yet, so
well, Theo's whole thing, it's really cute because when he gets a bad hand, you'll see that.
yeah.
Just small look of disappointment, but when he gets something, he doesn't do that. It'll be like
Yeah.
I'm trying not
I'm
to look
trying
like
not
I
to
have
any kind of yeah. So
it's
still a tell.
it's
because-
still a tell
yeah.
because when you don't get something, you
Yeah.
do something. Then what we know
Yep.
when you do. But I don't know. Are you a fan of poker at all?
I mean, I play. I just don't want to play when I go gambling because
Yeah.
it's just.
I love it. I think it's so much fun. Just as I'm not a big board game guy like my wife is. She
Yeah,
loves
no,
board games.
Me either.
I love poker. I just love playing it, and it's been fun as a family thing. And
Yeah.
because we got enough to have a little table, you know, 5
Yeah,
people.
no,
It's good
y'all
enough
have
for
a
a
good,
little.
yeah, y'all have a good family group to be able to do that with. So, now growing up, I remember my mom and dad hanging out with aunts and uncles and other family friends, and they would play poker.
Yeah.
On the weekends.
What's the one? Is it? There's one card game. Is it Hearts or Rummy? There's one I've wanted to kind of look into, but it just seems so damn complicated. Can't remember which game. No, it's Bridge.
Bridge. Oh,
Bridge.
yeah,
Have you ever
no.
played Bridge?
I've never played bridge. My wife actually, for a while while we were in Kentucky, actually had a bridge group that she
Really?
went to, yeah.
You don't
So-
see much of those anymore. I remember
I
so
don't-
many
yeah, I
people
don't
playing
hear about
Bridge
them
when I
as
was
much as-
growing up.
Yeah,
But I just don't get it.
I never have tried. So
Oh, I tried. I
Did
was
you?
like, this is just, and
Yeah, no,
and
I
I'm
never
also
tried.
a lazy person by nature. I was like, this just seems like rocket science. I'm out.
if it requires too much work, I don't want to do it outside of work. So
it was too much thinking
yeah,
for me.
I don't want to think outside of work. I want to.
I'm the same way.
I want to
just,
sit back and relax and enjoy myself and see what kind of stupid things I can do.
Oh, absolutely. And even video games have gotten to where they're like so complex now with your builds and all the. Like Max is all about that stuff, and he's super sharp, and he's very strategic. He likes RPGs,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, they've just gotten so far beyond, you know.
I'm not a video game guy, so
Were you when you were younger though, or did you?
not really. I
Kinda-
mean, I would play, but I did not play anywhere near like some of my friends did. My
Right.
brother did.
Yeah.
I got a younger brother that would play all the time. I mean, me, Nah,
Well,
he was
playing
fine.
all the time back then is probably different than playing all the time now.
Well, no, yeah,
because
there's a huge
now
difference.
it's
Yeah,
literally,
it's
all,
literally
the time.
all the time.
I know actual children who get up in the morning on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
turn the video games on, and then do not leave the room until bedtime. They're allowed to do this,
Oh, I know.
and it's nuts to me.
Why? Yeah, it's terrible for them. So I
No, I do think video games do teach valuable skills. It's
They
like
can.
some of these, like Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, you have to hunt to eat. You
Mm-hmm.
have to have resources. You have to, like it teaches you conservation and,
Teaches you-
and a little
yeah.
bit about having a budget. And
Right.
like, there's lessons
there
there.
are lessons to be learned if you want to actually learn lessons.
Sure.
From it. But most people don't go into these games looking to learn a lesson. They go into these games looking to
No, but they might inadvertently
conquer
learn
it.
something.
So
If you have
possibly.
to conserve ammo
Yeah.
for a fight or something, and like it gets really complex. If you have this certain type of armor, it gives a boost to this weapon, and like we were saying earlier, like I don't want to have to think and work.
yeah, no,
Right, and it's no longer fun when I have to really put that much time into it. I
Well,
mean, I grew up
it's-
with Mario, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I play Mario is about the extent of where I'm going to go out. I mean,
Yeah.
even the newer Zeldas, it's like, good grief. When I was a kid, Zelda was simple. You literally went from
Relatively, yeah.
but at the time it was actually a relatively complex game. But
At the time, it was, yes.
But now it's considered relatively simple. But even a simple game like Zelda is too complex for me at this point
Right.
in time.
And it is now, well, they're emulating more like The Witcher 3, the open world,
Mm-hmm.
which Zelda was probably the closest thing to an open world game when it came out in 86 because
Yeah,
it
it
had
was.
just this map
Yeah.
and you didn't know where to go. There weren't just
Yeah.
levels where you
No,
were
no, you
side
didn't.
scrolling.
Right.
And, I guess if you just wanted to go mess around and explore, that option was there. But, in 1986, 87 is when we got our Nintendo, so I would have just turned 6.
Yeah.
And so, we got them like a year late. They came out in 86 in Japan. Arkansas got them around 87.
87,
Christmas is
okay.
when, I don't know about the rest of the U.S., but for us. And so, you had a lot of friends that had it. And so we all had this, we go to school and say, hey, I got to this part.
Yeah.
How did you get past this? Oh, I got
Yeah.
past that, and here's how I did it. And so it was almost like a community thing where people would come to school the next day. And how
And
did
it
you
had
get
to
past
do
this?
How to do that? Yeah.
And then the sleepover. Like he's gonna
Yeah.
show us how to beat this boss, and so we'd all go over to play video games.
Yeah.
But still, it was a treat because like we weren't even really allowed to play until the sun was down.
Right.
It was like, play outside until the sun goes
you
down.
You go outside and you play, and then when the sun goes down, you come in, you can play for 30 minutes or an hour. And
Sure. Like I just don't remember playing video games a lot when the sun was up.
yeah.
No,
No.
it was like a
We
treat
didn't.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Whereas now with kids having phones, which is a completely different beast.
Oh.
Is Marshall doesn't have a phone
He
yet?
actually
but
does.
He does
Yeah.
have a phone.
And
Okay.
it's just because.
Full capabilities, or is
yeah,
it
he has-
limited?
It's full capabilities
Okay.
just because we haven't chosen to. I mean, there's limitations to it.
Yeah.
There's certain things that are blocked, but
Yeah.
the blocks are pretty limited.
Yeah. Well, Walter has one too, and it's pretty unlimited. But I
Yeah.
trusted him enough to, and I'm like,
Yeah.
if you abuse it, it's gone.
No, and that's the thing. Is
It's always like
a-
they are on the side of freedom.
Yeah,
you know.
if you abuse it, we have a monitoring software that we keep on both of our kids' devices, so we know that what they're looking at. If
Right.
it's something that's concerning, I mean, for Marshall, crap, he's getting warnings all the time for weapons because he enjoys martial arts, and so nunchucks, knives, katanas.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you name it, and he's watching a video about
You
it.
should probably limit or like be more careful about who he's hanging out with. Because right now he's hanging out with some bad influences.
Yeah, his influences. There's somewhere a video of I think one of the kids taking a katana and fruit ninjaing a
watermelon.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
like
it
the
happens.
5th of July this year, maybe.
Somewhere in that
Somewhere
vicinity.
in that
yeah.
vicinity, yeah. And I do believe there was a bit of an argument over which of the boys were going to katana that
Yeah.
thing in half. So
Yeah. Those three get together, and it's
who knows what's going to happen with those three?
but they're good kids.
They are, yeah.
I don't feel like they're sinister. I know some sinister kids where it's
Oh.
like I don't trust
Dude,
that kid.
Uh-uh.
I can deal with
mischief, a little bit of mischievous, you know.
That's cool. That's normal.
That's normal.
That's what you should do.
It's the kid that you're worried about skinning cats or something, you know, and
doing something they're not supposed
and
to do.
Again, I know kids like that, but no.
I know several like that.
Marshall's a good kid. We love having him over. He's a mischievous kid, but we like him.
He's a mischievous kid that I like having in my house most of the time.
Here.
So,
and those boys get so excited, like they just count down to when he comes over. Both of them do.
well, we were Marshall and I were having the conversation about the fact that I was coming over and doing this, and he's talking about it. At some point in time, there was a discussion about the boys should host one of these. I said that could actually be kind of an interesting concept.
That would be fun.
Yeah,
that
the boys
could
in
be
here
funny.
and they host, and you and I get to be the guests. And,
Yeah, that would be fun.
kind of sit back and do
But
that.
I actually started the whole podcast. The first podcast we did was with Walt and Theo.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, we didn't. Julia doesn't want them on camera, and I get
Okay.
it. They're,
Yeah, no,
they're
I get it,
young,
yeah.
but we still did one.
Yeah.
and I still have it. So
Okay.
even if I don't air it, like I'll always
Right.
have.
You
that.
always have it.
Yeah. So it was a fun experience because
Yeah.
I was interviewing the boys, but that would be neat to have the
Yeah.
boys interview the dads, even if
Yeah.
you don't put it out there, just
Yeah,
to have it.
just to have it. Yeah, it'd be
20
kinda
years
fun.
later, go
Yeah.
back and watch it.
I think it'd be kind of fun to actually put it out there because I think that would actually kind of be an interesting concept.
I think it would be too.
So-
I'm not as mamas are a little bit. Well, dads
probably-
and moms are protective in different ways.
Exactly. I'm probably a little more protective than in a lot of these things than Holly is, my wife. So, just
Yeah.
to be quite honest. So, but I also work in a field that I feel like I have to be. So
Yeah, and I want to get into your field.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually,
a
I'm
little
sure.
bit. Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to. It's a serious field. You know, there's
Yeah.
a lot of things you deal with, but no, raising boys. I know we talked about this a little bit last time, but
Yeah.
I want to just kind of reiterate it because you got a teenage daughter.
Yeah,
and you
16-year
got
daughter
a
and
young son.
Yeah, 11-year-old son to go with it.
Up to the point to where at 11, which was harder raising up to that point.
Honestly, Marshall's been harder.
Has he?
Yeah, but he also has a few other specific types of challenges.
Yeah.
He's a little higher energy.
Yeah.
He's a little more mischievous than she
Yeah.
was. So,
And he gets that from you or mama?
no, he definitely gets that from me.
That's you.
That's me.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they both have a lot of me in them. And Marshall has the part of me that is the fun part, in my opinion. Haley Ann has the part, my daughter, that I think is more of the frustrating side of me. So,
Of you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're getting it paid back a little
oh
bit.
yeah. My mom's view in life is that when you have kids, you're getting paid back 3
Yeah,
to 7
yeah.
times
Oh,
what
yeah.
you actually did to your parents. So
Yeah.
I do feel sorry for my kids whenever they have kids. So because I know what they've gotten away with.
Sure.
So
Yeah. It's that is a funny thing. We've been pretty fortunate so far in that Max is just a very logical, cautious child.
Yeah.
But I hate getting compliments on parenting.
Yeah.
When people say, "Oh, you guys are just doing such a good job." I'm like,
Yep.
"Oh man, this could go sideways
no,
at
let's
any
not
moment."
get there. Yeah, that's a problem.
I don't know
So,
how much parenting. Now, parenting obviously plays a role, and this kind of gets into
Right.
what kind of your job.
Yeah.
How much, if you look at nurture versus nature, which one of those things controls the pie, or is it just?
It depends on what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, in what ways? It's so.
Yeah.
There are certain things that are definitely nature.
Well, for example, like, so I've got 3 boys,
Yeah.
and you know them all relatively.
Yeah.
So Max is completely different than Walter, and Walter's completely different from Theo.
Yeah.
And we feel like we raised them all relatively similarly,
Right.
but with Max, he was our first, so you're a
Mhm.
little more cautious. You're a little more, this is our baby, we got to keep it alive.
yeah.
By the time Theo comes around, it's like,
There
man,
you go.
just stick the fork in the light
Yeah,
socket if you want
whatever.
to know what happens.
Yeah.
You know,
Tell
so
me how
that
it
is a
feels when you get
change in
done. Yeah,
parenting.
it is.
Because you like, oh, the things we used to worry about with Max were
Mhm.
really silly. We were first time parents, just trying to do everything right. And then Theo was basically raised by his brothers
Right.
and wolves.
Yeah. Well,
But-
that's fine. So
So
that
that's
happens. So
that's
nurture,
Right.
but how much of the genetic, because every kid gets a different genetic sequence too.
They do, yeah.
So like Walter's a little more me on some things, a little more mama. The mix is different.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's kind of how both of our kids are. I mean, they're different in what that mix is.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter, the elder, is actually unfortunate in the fact that she was born while I was still a resident. And actually, I was a pediatrics resident at the time.
Okay, so you do have pediatric
yeah, no.
experience
My
too.
background is I'm actually a pediatrician, a general psychiatrist, and a child psychiatrist. That's
Okay.
That's all the training that I took, and she was born during a time where I was still technically in pediatrics training, and so the expectations that I had as far as what we were going to do to keep her safe was much different than the ones that I had for Marshall, because I had kind of loosened up and realized that certain things were not quite as bad as I thought they were. I mean, if you were to ask Holly about the first 6 weeks of Haley Ann's life, she would say that she was a prisoner because it was in the middle of the winter, and
Right.
I was not about to let my kid out of the house in the first 6 weeks, because if she got a fever,
Right.
I knew what was going to happen.
Right.
She was going to get hospitalized. She was going to get a spinal tap. She was going to get IV antibiotics. She was going to, and I'm like, I can do everything in my power to keep her from getting these problems of having to have all this if I just
Right.
keep her in the house and don't let anyone interact with her.
Sure.
And Holly, I mean, man, that she still to this day says that she felt like a bit of a prisoner for those first 6 weeks till I finally loosened up. But I had
Yeah.
a hard time loosening up.
But
to
she's
be
also your
honest.
first.
She was, yeah. I mean, that's just it. She's my first. It was during I had just got off of inpatient pediatrics. I was like, this is not
Yeah.
a good time for a
So
child.
she's
to be
born in what, 08?
December 08, 07.
07?
Yeah,
Okay.
late 07.
Max was
So.
2010, and yeah, we were definitely. Now I don't think we were extreme like some people, but we were definitely. You know, we had like the little plug-ins and we had the little things where you couldn't open the drawers. We did not.
That was not my house. I didn't get to that far, but
Well, that wasn't. That was Mama, not me. I thought that was a little nuts, but we didn't do any of that stuff with the subsequent children. It was.
I do that
Yeah.
at work just because.
Well,
just
yeah,
because. But
yeah, that's a
beyond
different
that, yeah,
story.
it's a whole different story. We have that conversation at another time, but that's one of those spots that, growing up, my kids, we didn't do a lot of the plugs and the never had the drawer locks,
Yeah.
and drawer locks, and that
Well,
was just always the if you get into something you're not supposed to, you're going to wish you hadn't because
Yeah.
it's going to hurt.
Yeah, it is funny though when you see younger people having their first babies and seeing how it almost feels like with every year it gets a little more ramped up, the levels of protection, because growing up in the 80s, man, we didn't have
I mean,
these car seats and cribs and
No.
fans in our
yeah.
strollers.
I mean, my daughter's old enough to drive now, and
Yeah.
her car that
That's
I
scary.
got her, yeah, that is. But the car that I got her actually has a ability to turn on a warning that it will tell you to look in the back seat after you turn off the car before you shut the door. Every time you turn the car off, it'll give you a warning. Check the back seat. And I never, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand where some people can kind of get there, but we're at that spot in society where we need a warning to check your back seat to make sure that you haven't.
Well, we're smarter in a lot of ways and we're dumber in a lot of ways. I feel like common sense is no longer required.
Common sense was never common.
That's a good. I need to clip that one out.
And it's definitely not common now.
It
I
was
don't
never
know,
common,
I don't know
but
that it
it's
was
not
ever
common
common,
now.
but it's definitely not now. It's extremely rare.
And I see it with the smartest people too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
Yeah.
things you don't, and that's where experience comes in a lot of
Yep.
time to give you those. Well, this seems rather obvious now that I've made this mistake.
Yep. No. decisions are no longer smart. People just kind of go about them and hope for the best. And when the bad happens, they're like, "Why'd the bad happen?" Well,
Yeah.
you didn't actually use your brain.
We get in. So you're a pretty religious guy.
Yeah.
So you're involved in the church.
Yeah.
Just having a discussion with my mom right when you arrived, and she's a very religious person. I am not.
Yeah.
I believe in the teachings, like the message of Jesus. I don't know what all transpired. I'm not
Right.
ready to go all in and say, yeah, I'm 100% on that.
Right.
But I am fascinated with it, and,
Right.
in
Yeah.
theology and history and all that stuff. Where do you think, like prayer, for instance, and God's involvement with life? You know, people pray to win football games. Do you
Yeah.
think God is like a Chargers fan? And he's like, oh,
I don't. I really don't.
How
think
does that all work, do you
I
think?
think that is people overdoing religion.
Sure.
I think
a
that
little
people,
bit of signaling.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little signaling at that point.
But do you believe that God will intervene in families that are having a hard time if they ask Him for help?
Yeah, I think that if families are having a hard time, depending on what they're asking for, I think that is a possibility that she, however you want to look at it,
Right.
will intervene. But sometimes the answer is
No.
no. And that's the problem that people have. People think that when I ask, the answer should always be yes.
Right. But just like a
And
parent, you're never
The answer
gonna
is the
say
answer
yes
is-
every time.
Yeah, the answer is not always yes.
Right.
And we don't always understand the no's.
Right.
Why did you say no? Why did this happen? I mean, I was talking with, oh goodness, who was it? I don't remember who it was the other day, but I was talking with someone, and they just kind of had the conversation about why does God let bad things happen to people?
Well, that comes from the free will.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the whole concept lies, is that there's
Right.
a lot of free will in there
Right.
of what did you choose,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes we don't understand what the downstream effects of that bad is going to be.
Right.
There may be a reason that we can't see right now.
Oh, sure. Even in fictional writing, there
Mhm.
like George R. R. Martin. I'm sucked back into Westeros, and I hate
no,
this,
we're-
but I'm reading the history book, and
Yeah.
it's like this king made this decision, and it seemed good at the time, but it actually sowed the seeds for something that happened 20 years later.
Yeah,
You know,
and that's the thing, is it's that planting of seeds is what's
right,
happening.
right.
And we may not be there.
You can't
to
know
see
all
it.
consequences.
Yeah. We may not see the consequence of our action.
And if you assume God does exist, which I do
Yeah.
believe in a higher power, I just
Yeah.
don't necessarily know that it's the Judeo-Christian God that I've been
the
sold on.
Right? Yeah.
Right. I think God is so complex we can't even conceive
We don't.
of it.
We don't have the words or the concepts.
Right.
for
We're not even
all
capable
of, it.
of imagining what God could be. I mean, we're struggling with AI right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, if God is more powerful than AI, then obviously it's something we can't even wrap our brains around. But if
Yep.
you have two families and both have, let's say, two spouses are losing their partners to cancer.
Yeah.
One prays to God to save my husband, and the other
Yeah.
one says the same prayer. One husband dies, one husband doesn't.
Yeah.
Do you give God credit for saving the one, or is that just biology and that's how that would have played out anyway?
Well, I mean, there's no way to answer that.
I know.
I mean, you're asking for a
But-
question that is not possible to answer.
Exactly. But people have faith
Right.
that God will intervene in some
Right.
circumstances, but then, like you said, sometimes the answer is no because
I
we
mean-
can't see the big picture.
Again, I will tell you, in my career, I have seen people that have been in situations that should not survive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no humanly possible way that you're going to make it out of this.
Yeah.
And they survive.
Yeah.
I can't explain that through medicine. I can't explain that
Right.
through science.
Really? So
Yeah, I can't make
you're
this-
saying when the medical information or facts are against them and they still survive.
Yeah.
How do you explain
yeah,
that?
I can't explain other
Okay.
than the fact, I mean, you can say, okay, yeah, great. The medical facts would say that there is a 0.001% chance that you're going to live. So there's still a chance. But
So you're saying
there's a chance, yeah. But at the same time, the people in medicine would tell you that 0.001% chance of survival is a zero.
Right.
I mean, the chances of that is just
Sure.
not even. I mean, not even worth trying to try to figure out. And but is that God or is that weird
Yeah.
statistical anomaly? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's probably both.
Could be.
God is probably the statistical anomaly.
Could be.
I mean, in that situation.
I had a friend that I work with, was real close to,
Yeah.
and he got diagnosed with throat cancer.
Yeah.
And didn't dip, didn't smoke anything, and they went in, they cut it out, and there was an issue, I guess, because they had to cut into the trachea. Part of it didn't get sutured up correctly, and then there was food that was getting out and into the lungs
Into the lungs
somehow.
yeah.
And then it was getting infected, obviously. Anyway, just to fast forward, once they got that cleaned up and he was cancer free, then they notified us that, oh, actually, it turns out he's got cancer all over his body. He's got it in his bones and everything.
Yeah.
And, well, so the story was, good friend of mine, he was going to come on the podcast, but he had the throat cancer stuff. He's like, let me get healed up from this, and then we'll schedule
We'll
something.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, you let me know when, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Then he gets diagnosed with terminal, and they say 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And so he calls and he goes, we need to do this soon.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm already it's actually a little hard for me to talk about because it just happened recently. But he said, I'm making videos to back up, they had been trying to have a child for years. So he was almost 40.
Yeah.
They've been trying for like a decade.
Oh, wow.
To have kids. They couldn't have kids. They were going to all these fertilization clinics and all that stuff.
Fertility specialists,
So
yeah.
they finally get pregnant a couple years ago. He has a baby girl. Never seen anybody just more excited about
Yeah,
this.
no, those individuals tend to
and
be,
you can
yeah.
see, because I knew him before the baby and after the baby, and once you have a child, it changes you
Oh, it does. No,
irreparably.
there's-
It changes your
yeah.
priorities. It changes the level of selfishness that you are from
Yes.
100 to somewhere less than that.
Yes, very much so.
Right, so you see that change in him. He worshipped this baby girl, and then all these things start happening.
Yeah.
So then it goes to 3 months, and he goes, "Hey, we need to do this podcast soon. I want to
Yeah.
get this on record." And he said, "I'm recording messages for my daughter on her birthdays and all this stuff." I'm like, "God, how do you even do this?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Dude, you tell me when." He goes, "Well, let me kind of get some rest this weekend, and maybe next weekend we can do this thing."
Yeah.
Well, by Monday he was in hospice,
Oh, man.
and then he died yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And
man.
it's like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
How does somebody go in, be told they're cancer free, and then told, "Oh, you got it in your bone marrow, your lungs, your..."
Yeah.
Like, were they just doing the wrong tests? Or, like, how do they miss that kind of stuff? And maybe this isn't a
That's-
question for you. You're not an
Yeah,
oncologist.
I'm not an oncologist.
I'm just
I
asking
mean,
it.
without going back and seeing the entire what all have they done. I mean, there's, I mean, things like that can happen.
And so quickly,
yeah.
and it's like, and I don't blame God for that.
Right.
That's
No,
a thing
that's-
that biologically happened.
Right.
Was there any amount of prayer that could have saved that man? I don't know, because I don't know what the long term
Well, I mean,
thing is,
the whole concept is that it's a question that has no answer you can actually get to.
No,
Because
but it's fun to ponder.
it is fun to ponder, but it's the fact of, if you had prayed and God said, yes, we're going to heal this individual, okay, was that God doing it or was
Right.
it not?
Right.
And again, if he passes and is that because God said no? I need him to I need this to happen this way. You don't understand
Well,
why.
maybe he needs to pass in order for the daughter to.
Yeah.
Because
That's what I mean.
Right.
Why?
And maybe
Yeah.
she will do something later in
Yeah.
her life because this happened to her. We can't see.
We can't
the
see.
future.
Yeah.
It's like if
I
I
mean-
watch a movie with one of my kids and I know how it ends,
Yeah.
but they're asking questions like, I don't want to spoil it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
God can't spoil it for you.
No. Well, I
Right.
mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Now You See Me. I think it's Now You See Me.
Doesn't sound familiar.
It's about a group of magicians, is what it is, and they talk about the long game. One of the magicians, literally in this movie, the long game was he actually had someone sign a card, and he got it basically so that it would stick itself inside of a tree, and then 30 years later came back and cut the tree in half, and this card is in there.
Okay.
So talking about the long game.
Yeah.
He knew that this particular individual was going to be at this location 30 years later,
Wow.
or he took a risk that this individual was going to be there 30 years
Okay.
later. And so his long game was 30 years down the road. At the moment of the initial trick, no one except for the magician knew what was going to happen.
Well, there's a value in the long game. Patience
Yeah.
is a virtue.
Oh, it
I mean,
is.
if you
Yeah.
look at China, like they set out 100-year plan.
Uh-huh.
Whereas we have 4 years to get it done or not get it done, and then
Yeah. And then maybe another 4 if you're lucky.
and maybe if you're lucky, but how much? I mean, and I don't want to get too political, but
Right.
with Joe Biden, I feel like we really didn't have a cognizant, high functioning president for 4 years. So the country can obviously run without one.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, in my opinion, we don't need a president to actually function.
He's a figurehead.
He's a figurehead. He doesn't. He is the person who puts out the plan of where they think that
Right.
we should go, but outside of that, it's actually those people who are in other parts of power that actually decide where.
Well, it's the
world
unelected
goes.
bureaucrat.
Yeah.
There is a deep state, and
Yeah.
Trump wasn't the first one to claim this. I mean, this has been
No.
going back to the JFK
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, there's again, bureaucrats make more decisions than politicians do.
absolutely.
So don't.
Absolutely.
I'll never disagree with that statement. So
Yeah. But like this Trump's a threat to democracy stuff, like I just don't see him coming in there and saying, I'm dictator now.
I think that in that situation you run into problems where, as long as people still expect that he's going to follow certain rules, then yeah. But I mean, you go back and look at Nazi Germany, though. I mean, I'm not trying to compare him to Hitler, but if you look at that, no one thought that Hitler was going to kind of go the path that he did whenever he got elected.
Yeah.
Go back to Julius Caesar, back into ancient Roman. I mean,
Sure.
good grief, if you looked at what was supposed to
Well,
happen
Hitler was
there.
Also an interesting
Well,
set
it was
of
a whole other
circumstances.
set of circumstances.
They had lost
yeah.
World War One.
Right.
He's trying. I mean,
yeah.
you know.
A little different, yeah, but it's it's still
I
one
do
of those things.
get the. I mean, there are similarities between Hitler and Trump, obviously.
Well, yeah.
I mean, Hitler was a very charming, eloquent speaker, and
Yeah.
and a lot of people loved him. There was a lot of people that hated him in Germany at the time
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You know, he was a very polarizing figure, but the people who loved him were rabid for him, and
Yeah.
I get the comparisons.
Right. No.
Trump is a populist.
Yeah.
He's not a career politician.
No, he's
which
not.
I think a lot of people like that because it's like,
Right.
hey, let's shake this shit up. That's
Right.
why I like him.
Yeah.
I think he is the best thing to get in the China shop if you want to wreck it down. But again, I'm also very limited government kind of guy. I'm more of a
Right.
libertarian. I think the
Yeah.
government needs, hey, get us some roads and bridges and stay the fuck out of our way and
stay
let
out
the
of-
states,
Yeah. Stay
Take
out
care
of
of
the
it.
way.
Yeah.
I mean, I can get behind some of that.
you know. Is anybody who runs for the president not a sociopath and a narcissist? I don't think so. I think
You almost have to be.
You have to-
A
you do have to
narcissist.
be.
Yeah.
You
So,
do have to
yeah.
be. There is even at the director VP level in a corporation,
Yeah.
you have to be.
Yeah. I mean,
You can't see people as individuals anymore. You have to see them as numbers, and you have to see budgets, and you don't care about personal lives.
yeah.
It's
At some point, you got to check
At some
out.
point, you got it's there's the difference between, yeah, when you're in your personal life and when you're in your work life.
Well, what, as far as in your role and what you do, what do you see as the biggest concern, like psychology-wise or I mean, you got mental
goodness.
health, you got.
Oh,
What are you seeing that's really concerning you right now that maybe wasn't a problem 10 years ago?
cell phones, social media. I mean, those two are.
You're
probably,
seeing real world
oh,
problems because of social media.
unfettered access to electronics and social media are.
Okay.
Honestly, I spend more time every single day trying to address those issues.
Which
and
is
how they
ultimately a
impact.
parent's
It is.
job
I mean, it
to
is a parent's
limit
job.
these things for their
But-
kids.
Unfortunately, and this is getting into a whole other kind of problem, is that parents don't want to parent.
They're lazy. Yeah, absolutely.
They want to be friends. They want their kids to like them.
Well, that's cool having fun with your kids, but at the
there's-
end of the day, there needs to be a hierarchy.
Right. There's a difference between having fun with your kids
Yeah.
and setting expectations for your kids
Right.
and being their friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be my kids' friends.
No. Not at all.
I want to spend time with my kids. I want to have fun with my kids.
Absolutely.
But I do not, in any way, shape, or form, want to be my kid's friend.
Well, a friend is sharing, and it's
Yeah.
you're not going to be unloading your soul on your kids.
Nope.
That's a burden on them. You
Yeah.
don't need,
I
they're
mean-
not confessors. I know a lot of parents who tell their kids all their deepest, darkest secrets. What a burden that is
You
on
know,
these kids.
My teenager has come back to me because I may do what I do for a living, but I still
Yeah.
occasionally kind of fall into the bad habits. And
Sure.
she's actually had to correct me and say, "Dad, this is not a conversation you and I need to be having. This is between you and Mom. This is not between. I don't need.
Okay.
I don't need to be part of this conversation."
Right.
And so, I mean, I taught her. I mean, Holly and I taught her to speak up like that.
Yeah, no,
it's okay to
absolutely.
say, "Look, this is not my job.
Yeah.
I should not be in this conversation." And so, for us, even in my professional world, I still sometimes fall into that spot where I'll have a conversation that is not appropriate. That should be more of I go and talk to my friends about this concern that I have, not my daughter or my
But it's a
son.
real
It can
fine
be.
line.
Yeah.
Can be.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even that that you're trying to talk to your kids about the problem. It's just that you're literally just vocalizing.
Or explaining a thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
hey,
yeah, no.
here's why I did this. And
Yeah.
you might not even need to know that, but
Well, and sometimes it's just the fact that for me, I do better if I process out loud than if I
sure.
keep
Yeah.
it in. So,
Well, I always feel like transparency is the answer. Freedom and transparency.
Yeah.
And so as a parent, I want to be transparent with my kids.
yeah.
And I'm not always the good guy.
No, I'm
sometimes
not.
I make mistakes or I do
Yeah.
something and I want to say, hey, here's what I did wrong. It's a teaching moment.
Yep.
Because you're not the only ones who can make mistakes. I'm
Yeah,
fallible
no,
too.
I make mistakes. So,
I pushed your mom down the stairs. I shouldn't have done that.
yeah,
But let's talk about it. That's a joke, people.
take it as such.
But I do get the need for a parent to want to be friends with the kids.
Right.
I get that, but you can't.
You can't. No.
There has to be a separation.
There is a hierarchy in
Because
life.
Walter and I'm coaching his football team.
Yeah.
We've basically got a band now. He's jamming with he's playing drums and we're
Yeah.
we're doing that. And he's having a lot of fun with that, but I'm like, hey, I'm still your dad. You
Yeah,
need people and that's why Marshall's great.
Yeah.
Because when Marshall comes out, man, he's out playing, he's doing those things.
He's doing those
and
things.
it's not that I don't want to do those things with Walter, but I don't want him to just have me and
Right,
him.
no, it needs to be.
You need your friends.
You need other people.
peers.
Yeah, you need peers. You don't need
Right.
a parent. I mean, I've got kids that I treat that the only person they know in life is the parent.
Oh, that's sad.
I mean,
Do you-
we our kids, all of our kids are homeschooled.
Yeah.
I think Maxwell, I think, is doing some
Max
classes
is halftime at public
at
school
public
now.
school
Yeah.
right now. I think that was a change this year for Max. But our kids are homeschooled.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like both of our families have done a really good job of trying to make sure that our kids have a life outside of just our home.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
the
you have
socializa-
to.
Yeah.
You have to.
But you know, I've got patients that literally they're homeschooled,
and they have no outside.
they have no contact with the world.
Yeah, that's scary.
outside of their family
Right.
and their church.
Yeah.
And some of these are,
And they're never challenged on
Right.
anything.
yeah, no,
That is my biggest concern about the homeschool thing is that you are just not you're not having to be around people you can't stand.
right.
Right?
Yeah,
Because that's life.
Usually, you are around people in homeschool that you are very much like. I mean,
Or the parents are somewhat similar, so
yeah.
the kids are going to be raised similarly. You're not getting a lot of adversity.
No, you're not.
Whereas at high school, you're going
You're
to
gonna
see
get
a
a
lot of
lot.
assholes and
Yeah.
people you can't stand. But
I mean-
there's people I work with I cannot stand.
right.
How do you deal with that? How do you cope with that?
And that's part of growing up. I mean,
Mhm.
that's why I'm a big. When parents tell me that they're homeschooling their kids, my big thing is all right. So what are you doing for socialization?
Yes.
Where are they getting?
Do you
their
have
content?
conversations about that with parents
Yeah.
who are going to homeschool? Do
Oh yeah.
you?
No. It's a conversation that
Okay.
happens every time you come into my office and you say, because when I first meet you, one of the first questions I ask a kid is your name, who are you with here today. I don't talk to the parents.
Yeah.
I'm talking. I don't care if you're 4 years old. What's your name? Who are you with here today? And if you're old enough, what grade are you in? Where do you go to school at?
Mm-hmm.
If you tell me you're homeschooled, one of the first questions I ask is, so what do you do that's not just homeschool? Do you do a co-op? Do you do sports? Do you? What do you do?
Mm-hmm. Right.
What do you
Because
do outside of?
I'm
outside
sure
of?
you had some experience when you were growing up with homeschool kids. They were weird, man. If I ever encountered them, sometimes they'd come into school and they were just different.
You know, homeschool is much different now than it was.
Certainly. But I'm
when you
saying
and I were younger.
I had those
Oh, I had. Yeah, I know.
reservations when Julie wanted to homeschool.
Yeah.
I was like, man, all the
I-
homeschool kids I knew were weird,
I get you.
unsocialized.
Yeah.
They couldn't couldn't laugh at jokes because they didn't know it was a joke.
even in my own personal career, going through, a lot of the homeschool kids that I had ever met, that's exactly what they were.
Right.
I mean, that's just all the way up until just before we decide that we're going to homeschool our kids.
Right.
I mean,
but
we're-
you
we're-
obviously
we're-
made a decision. We're going to do it differently. We're
Right.
going to do it,
No,
and where
we-
we're still socialized because Max
Yeah.
has always been part of drama and robotics
Yeah.
and all
No,
these
yeah,
things.
yeah.
And he was in Taekwondo for a long time.
Right.
Different sets of kids.
Yeah, I mean,
and-
yeah, Max does his things.
Yeah, they've all
Walt
got
does
them. Walt's
his. Theo
got-
does
Theo's
his.
got his
I mean,
things.
both of my kids have their things. I mean,
Mhm.
my oldest, Haley Ann, she's a theater. She does drama, and that's
Yep.
That's her big thing.
She was
also-
great, by the way, in the play. That was fun. I've seen her now. You know, I don't know how long Max has been doing it. 4 years.
Oh, really?
But you know, I obviously didn't know you guys when I first saw her, but
Yeah.
I've seen Haley in
It
plays,
kinda- yeah,
going
do the- yeah.
through, and
I think we
love
discussed
seeing
it.
that she's still doing
I
it.
think this
and-
is her 7th season. I think.
Yeah.
6th or 7th.
yeah.
We were talking actually with the director of this show Thursday night for opening night about it, and Natalie actually thought that Haley Ann's first show was actually the first show she did with Natalie, which was 6 years ago, I guess,
Right.
at this point.
So how
that was
old?
Monster Hunters.
So
she was about 9,
Nine
when
and-
she started. She's
She's
9,
16?
maybe she's 16.
Yeah.
She was 9 at the time, maybe 10 when she actually started. She did a musical. Was her very first show.
Which one?
Junie B. Jones.
Okay.
So she did one of the. I mean, Arts Live has done numerous Junie B. Jones
Mhm.
musicals, but it was one of those, and it was her first experience, and it was just kind of one of those. You know what? I want to give this a try.
Yeah.
And she went. She tried it. She loved it.
Yeah.
She fell in love with theater, and hasn't looked back since. And
Yeah. She's
even-
good though.
and even during COVID, you know, the question was, how are these kids going to continue doing this during COVID?
Right.
And these theater groups, these children's theater groups in particular, found a way to still make it work.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't even know. I'd have to go back and look at her credits, but I think she ended up with like 5 different shows during COVID.
Yeah.
That they did.
That
Actually,
would
she
have been
was
around the time Max started.
Probably started, yeah.
Yeah.
She actually, one of the ones that she did, she actually was the lead for one of the shows that
Which-
was online.
Oh, that might have been before my time.
Yeah,
I've seen her in at least one lead role, I think.
she's not done a lot of leads. She does a lot of supporting. Trying to think, is she?
trying to think all the ones she's done that I've
Oh,
seen
goodness,
with
she's-
Max.
She's done quite a few with Max, yeah.
But no, she's talented at it. She's good at it.
Yeah.
And that's a rewarding thing for
Oh,
a
it
parent to
is, yeah.
see them, not only them enjoying it, but excelling at
Yeah.
it.
And then, of course, Marshall, he does martial arts. He's doing taekwondo.
Yeah.
And he actually goes next weekend. He has finally decided that he's black belt at this point in time, and he has decided that he wants to actually do competitions.
Oh,
And
really?
so, yeah, he's going for his first competition next weekend.
Oh, I bet Theo and Walt would love to go see that.
That's in Tulsa, so they
Not
may not
that far.
Like I say, they may not want to go. They may not want to go to Tulsa. I'm pretty sure it's Tulsa's where this one's at.
Well, we'll have football anyway, but
but
if he's got one local, let us know.
Yeah, no, we'll
come check it
yeah,
out.
no, Fayetteville Martial Arts does about one a year, but I think we missed this year's, for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But this one, for whatever reason, he decided this is the one he wants to do.
Yeah?
And so he's going, and I mean, for an 11-year-old, my kid is not the size of a typical 11-year-old.
No, yeah.
His weight is. His height is not, but he's.
I don't know if he's still, I call him the Hobbit.
Okay, that works. That fits very.
For right now, he's a Hobbit.
That's
he
fine.
doesn't have the hair on his feet.
Well, he might. I don't know. I haven't seen him in a while. So, but no, he is a guy that I went the other day to pick him up, and I'm like, dude, you're nothing but one solid, just tube of muscle.
What grade is he in?
6th, I think.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Man, I'd love to grab him as a running back.
Yeah, he's. I'm pretty sure he's Walt's age.
Yeah.
So-
That dude could run through some hole. He's got that stocky
Yeah,
build.
that's what I mean. He's stocky. He's
Yeah.
and
he'll
he's-
grow. Like
he is, but he's just solid muscle.
Yeah,
what
he is.
You know, if you were to put him on, this is back to where charts don't always tell you the whole
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
If you were to put my son onto the growth chart, height wise, he's small.
Yeah.
Weight wise, he's actually probably a little
Mhm.
heavier than he should be. And
But he's
so
not. He's not overweight. Though.
So that,
like
but,
he's,
but that puts the body mass index into a spot that he's almost there. If you were to look at his height and weight ratios, he's for his age, he's almost,
but he's not fat.
No, it's just because he's all muscle.
Right. He's all muscle and he's short.
He's
so
short.
He's just a brick.
He's short and a brick.
He's a brick. Yeah.
It's not that he's overweight.
No, not at all.
He's just a stout little dude
Yeah,
that
he is.
has an entire body of muscle. I don't think there's an inch of fat on that boy. I think his entire weight is nothing but he's doing. So one of the things he's doing for this competition is board break competition. And so they
Is what?
board break. So they break,
Oh, yeah.
martial arts breaking
Yeah,
boards. And of course now no longer are you actually breaking wooden boards.
I know, yeah.
They're actually breaking.
Aren't they seamed now?
They're
like
seamed.
they're
Well,
magnetic.
They're either magnetic or interlock. Plastic.
Interlock, yeah.
But they actually mimic an actual board break.
Yeah,
based
for
on,
sure, yeah.
Based on how they're built, they
Mhm.
actually mimic what is supposed to be a board for whatever color they are choosing.
Right.
I mean, I look at when he started, he was on a really kind of small, a small board over there, but he's.
Hold on.
It's done. I'm not leaving it on. I'm just telling you.
Dinner is on the stove.
There you go.
Hey,
I'll edit this out so we can talk freely.
yeah, we're good.
So you're going to the play,
I'm gonna take Max to the play, and I'm working.
the whole play.
I'm gonna stay there until it's over. So
Yeah.
I'll be
So
here.
y'all be back at 8:30.
Hey,
But-
if tell Holly to text me when you see her.
Okay.
I still have not gotten any kind of replies from her. I have called her about a dozen times before I got here.
Hear what the wives talking.
Well, just see if
Well,
she's
no,
alive.
and actually, well, Her boss actually texted me concerned because I texted Janie and said, "Hey, have you heard from Holly?" She said, "No, let me call the coordinator." And the coordinator said that she had left 20 minutes earlier, and it was just going straight to voicemail.
Huh.
And so I just figured she was out in a dead
So
zone,
is
or
this
her
like
phone
a
was dead.
legitimate concern? You're worried about?
I just got a message from. I just looked at my phone, and so, but just tell her to at least let me know that she's alive. Yeah, she's safe.
Or text me that she's okay. Like,
Yeah, no, I can pull my phone out. It's just the fact that she hasn't responded to me at this point in time.
God, that's frustrating, isn't it? When wives won't answer the goddamn phone.
Oh, I know. Well, for me, it was more of a. I knew where she was supposed to be doing her stuff at tonight or today, and it's in the middle of somewhere that there's a possibility she had no service,
Right.
and so I just didn't get too worried about it. But when Janie told me that she had been gone 20 minutes and still wasn't answering, but I also know Holly doesn't keep her phone charged, so she and I've had a disagreement about that.
She would not answer my calls for months, and it was
Oh,
infuriating me. It turns out somehow she claims it was an accident. She had muted my ringtone.
Oh, well, see, I still believe that Holly blocks me from time to time. So
Accidentally somehow.
Accidentally, yeah. I think
Funny how that happens.
I think she gets mad at me. She
20
blocks
years
me.
in, man.
So
This is 20 years in.
I mean, it happens. So
Let it happen again, we're gonna have problems.
hey, look, I've actually told Holly that she's lucky that I didn't call the police to go check on her.
I have also had that threat.
So because
One time, the time I wanted to call the police to check on you, the police brought you home.
So that also happened. And then there was another time.
She got in a wreck. I
Oh.
can't get a hold of her. She's late. Because she works night, so
Yeah.
she's supposed to be home by like 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
She's
Wouldn't
not
know.
home. She's not answering her phone. You know, it's now 9:30. She's not home. No call, no word. And then a police car starts coming up my driveway, and I'm like, "Oh shit, she's dead!"
Yeah.
And then she gets out of the police car, and that's when I started
But
punching
I got out
her.
of the police car and said, "It's fine. Everything's fine. Everything is fine. Don't worry about it." So he knew.
You got a good beating after that.
I
Though.
did. I got
yeah.
it.
Well, that's no.
Remember that one time I was like dead asleep because I worked like 4 overnights in a row, and he left work. I guess I was like dead asleep, and I didn't hear my phone ring, and he left work, and just like, you know, "Are you awake? Are you alive?" And I come to, "Just want to see you're alive," and then left and went back.
I've never quite gone that far, but again, I called Haley Ann twice trying to see if she had heard from her mom today. First time they still hadn't evidently gotten done with
Pictures.
with
and
pictures.
whatever, yeah.
I don't know what time they
Were they
actually
doing
got done.
pictures today?
Yeah,
I
they
sent
always
you
do.
a message that you didn't respond to.
I've got
I know.
trying to be professional with my guests.
So what I'm telling you is, Mr. Professional's son, I made dinner.
That's fine.
You know, I'm not making anybody eat it, but it is there.
Alright.
It's like,
Do they know?
the kids know.
Okay.
Nobody is hungry, you know.
No,
They're having
that's because
fun.
they've been eating.
As long as they know it's there, they'll.
They're fine. Again,
Mostly don't make them trash, and don't buy them trash.
Don't get them Taco Bell.
Please don't. I mean,
Well-
So just good enough for me. Okay.
okay, I see how we're at, so we're good.
right? Okay. And everybody heard it, and it's on video. So if I show up and there's Taco Bell evidence, I'd be very upset.
Well,
All right.
They can still eat Taco Bell.
Yes,
They're
Yeah,
boys.
they can eat
I guess
both.
so. As long as
I
they're
say-
eating my whole wheat rice and
Oh well, see,
olives.
therein lies the problem. If that's
I know.
what you made, then yes, we definitely gotta go Taco Bell.
Y'all are mean.
Hey.
I was trying to take care of everybody.
I love you. You'll be back around 8:30. I won't see you till then with Max.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Man. Married. How long y'all been married?
I gotta do the math. 20 years almost. Just shy of. So
How long were y'all together before?
not long. So Holly and I actually met September of my third year of med school,
Okay.
and we got married end of April of my fourth year of med school. So 18 months from the time that we met until we were married. We actually started talking about getting married. It was January after we met in September.
Yeah. Wow. That's quick.
So,
But, and how old were you at the time?
25.
So not super young.
No.
So
I
it was
was
kind of like,
I mean, we got married when I was 25, and Holly was 25 when we got married. We were past her birthday, so
I was, golly, I'm trying to think how old I was. Well, I was in my late 20s. I think I was 26 and she was 23.
So there's only 6 months between Holly and I.
When we got
I'm
married.
older by 6 months than her.
But for me, it was more like, man, I've played around. I've run the gamut, and this is a woman who is steadfast, who
Yeah.
I can see a future with, and it was like, why
Yeah.
wait if you feel like you've got it? But I also feel like that can go the other way on you, because when you're wooing said strumpet, right? Both sides do it. They
Yeah.
put their best side forward,
Yes.
right? So they're
Yes, yes,
pretending, they're acting, they're putting their best.
Well-
you don't get a lot of the hidden shit.
The interesting thing about how Holly and I met was neither of us had any intention of this being a relationship.
Really?
Yeah, when we first met, it was purely our best friends were trying to date each other. And they wanted to go out without it looking like a date. And so they invited us along. And
Are those two people together?
No, they're not.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's a whole other story. Holly actually hates it when I tell this story just because I like to embellish it a little bit and intentionally make it bad.
That's the key of storytelling, is to
I know.
embellish.
Well, I guess the part that I'll go ahead and say it, and she'll kill me later when it gets online.
She'll kill
I
you
don't care.
later.
It's fine. So if I end up dead, this is why.
Holly, we're gonna be monitoring this.
We're
guy.
watching this. So it was actually at the end of my OBGYN rotation.
Okay.
Is what it was, and I hated with a passion OBGYN. It was the worst. It actually was the second worst rotation that I did in my 4 years of med school. But it was the one that at the time I hated the most. It was actually my second one, so oh well.
I can imagine.
But I hated it, and so I was actually looking to go out and forget OBGYN. I was drinking. My goal was to drink away OBGYN.
Yeah.
Night.
I can't imagine.
yeah,
Man. I bet you
and-
saw some nasty shit.
Man, my favorite. I'll come back.
Yeah,
to
you
that
got a
story in
horror
second.
story? No,
And
it-
I'll come back to that horror
Okay,
story in just a second.
okay.
I got to finish the story about how we met. Then I'll come back to the horror story.
This is
about
how
OBGYN.
rabbit holes happen.
And this is rabbit holes. But we went, and so I was getting done with the rotation, and my friend asks, "Hey, me and this girl want to go out, but we don't want it to look like we're going on a date. Do you mind going?" I said, "I'm not going if I'm going to be the third wheel."
Yeah,
not
nobody.
happening.
No.
He said, "Don't worry, she's bringing her friend also."
Okay.
And I said, "Fine, I'll go." So the story now goes that I met Holly because of OBGYN. I met her because of my OBGYN rotation. And so, because I was going out to drink, my intention was to drink to forget. And of course, I was 3 sheets whenever she met me. I won't say all the choice words that she called me in the course of the first 30 minutes of meeting me. It was, anyone that knows my wife knows that she can be very, very, very firm with what she says.
Sure.
And anyone that knows me knows that I'm not always the smartest person in the world, and
Sure.
I'll say what I think. And
I think people can relate to both of those.
Don't always think through what I'm going to say.
Yep.
And I got called a few choice words the first few times that I met her. Of course, she had also just bought her car, and one of the first things she told me was, "Do not throw up in my car."
You threw up in the car.
No, I did not.
You did
I
not?
did not throw
Okay.
up in her car. I
Threw a
was-
twist on me.
I was actually drunk enough that I probably should have, but I didn't.
Out of respect.
Out of respect.
You wanted to,
Actually, it
but-
wasn't respect, it was fear at that
It was
point in
fear,
time. So,
yeah.
But no, so the joke is that I met my wife because of OBGYN. So,
That is funny.
my OBGYN rotation is why I met her.
So you had a horror story.
The horror story, let's not forget that one. So I guess it's a horror story, but it's not necessarily a horror story for me necessarily.
Right.
So part of OBGYN rotation was that you actually worked on in the community STD clinic. is where you worked at.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to go down
Yeah,
there.
nah, it was a community STD clinic, and so you had male and female patients that came in for that. There was this one particular patient that this is just, we were talking about computers earlier, just to prove how old this was. We were still on paper charts at the time.
Yeah.
And so this individual had a paper chart that literally was this tall. In this free STD clinic.
Oh, my.
Well, that should tell you something.
Repeat offender.
Yeah, repeat offender.
They had a file.
And I don't know if you, at the time, it's not how they do it anymore. Now they have some other ways of actually testing for STDs that are much nicer. But at the time, if you were testing for STDs, you actually had to do a swab. And so this was a guy that I had to do a swab on. And I have never actually seen someone be Spider-Man in my life. But this guy backed himself into a corner and walked up the wall, literally, while I was trying to get the swab done.
Oh, my. That's a image.
Yeah. And that's probably...
I mean, that doesn't feel good.
No, but, the fact that he had a stack of charts this tall means that he's had this done a lot.
Yeah.
And the fact that he still was going up the wall.
Man. So you get kind of, like, through medical school, you get put through the ringer.
You get
do
through
a lot.
You get lots
do
of
it
stuff.
all.
Yeah, you could do it all. I mean...
So you're kind of getting you're getting put in different zones.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, when you... I told you, I think I said earlier that my goal when I went into med school was to be an ER doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Honestly, my first rotation in my third year...
Yeah, actually, we're still trying to get back to that
we
first
haven't
question.
got back all the way to
how you got into
how the crap did I get into
psychiatry.
psychiatry. Well, we'll get back to it now. So, going back into my third year, my very first rotation was an emergency psychiatry rotation at the VA in North Little Rock. Or in Little Rock.
Emergency psychiatry.
Yes. So, the VA actually had a clinic that was attached to the ER. And so it was a walk-in clinic. So vets would have scheduled appointments to come in, but there were also, like if someone walked into the ER and was suicidal, you would literally bring them over into the clinic and you would have a visit with them and try to figure out what's going on and fix what was happening. And again, if someone was over at the internal medicine clinic or at the rheumatology clinic or the ortho clinic and they were having a mental health crisis, they came over and were called and we just had to see them immediately. It was kind of a cool kind of setting overall. And
that is interesting.
I mean, there were a lot of times that you would literally sit there and twiddle your thumbs and go, are we going to do anything today? And then suddenly you would have 5 patients sitting in front of you all at one time, and you just spent 3 hours twiddling your thumbs talking to the attending about 10,000 different diagnoses.
And these are at-risk people?
Yeah, these are almost all are people that are easily could have been put into a psychiatric facility.
Yeah, this brings me into another thing. So I don't know if I've told you. I think I have, that I've been diagnosed with bipolar a couple of times. And medicine is, is it not? Like, is it? I always wonder, because usually there's like an event trigger that'll send me into a spiral. So is that...
That's normal.
So I'm always trying to understand what's wrong with me, right? But how do you... If you have somebody who's at risk, who you think is suicidal, how do you navigate that?
Individually, I mean that's a...
Yeah, but how do you get a gauge on who this person is? Like, if I got 3 kids to raise and I know each one, like this one,
So a lot of times as a professional, you have to decide, okay, is this person someone that with my training that I can feel like I can trust? Do they give me the signs that they're being honest with me?
Well, and just a little bit on that, there are people who will use that threat as an attention seeker.
That's what I mean. Right.
And so is
Yeah.
that kind of what you're...
That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of professional kind of intuition that goes into this.
But you got to have some instincts.
It's instinct. It's intuition
so
and instinct.
Is this person
what a lot,
for real?
Yeah.
Is this person not? But if you
And-
have somebody who's for real, who you think this person is...
is a threat to themselves.
Right.
And at that point in time, so, I'm a big believer that I try not to hospitalize anybody.
Okay.
If I can keep you out of the hospital, that's my goal.
Yeah.
But I have a big view on the mental health hospital that it's for two purposes.
Okay.
The mental health hospital is for rapid changes in medication. So if I can't safely monitor you on an outpatient basis and I need your medicine changed rapidly,
Yeah.
that's where the hospital comes into play.
Okay.
But the bigger one is it's a place to get you safe. It's not meant to get you better. It's meant to get you safe.
Okay.
So basically, you go into a psychiatric facility, a locked facility, so that you don't have access to means effectively.
Sure.
And you end up then allowing the people who are around you to either create a safety plan so that you can safely be outside of the hospital,
Okay.
or whatever triggered that response can be processed and taken care of. So, case in point, I had a patient the other day that came in that had gotten out of the hospital. I was seeing them after they were hospitalized, but they went into the hospital because their boyfriend broke up with them.
Okay. So there was a trigger.
And they wanted to end their life.
Sure.
They had a very specific plan on what they were going to do.
Okay.
They didn't have anyone who could be a support system to make sure that they were safe. So they got put into the hospital
Okay.
until such point in time as they were able to process that loss, and also a safety plan was put into place. They actually ended up with people who were able to come down and stay with them
Okay.
for a few
Okay.
days.
Okay.
And so the hospital was not
support network.
the support. It was
kinda-
basically to give time for
To
the
give
support
time for it to
come around.
to arrive. Yeah.
because a lot of times suicide is actually a rapid response to a temporary problem.
Yes.
And if you actually had
Like
time,
probably a high percentage.
It's
right?
a very high percentage.
Very high percentage.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had in my career now. I've had two patients. As far as I know, neither one of them have actually ended their own lives. But I've had two patients that have very clearly told me that when I decide that it's time for me to die, I will kill myself.
Right.
And as a psychiatrist, that's a hard one to hear.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, neither one of them have actually done that at this point in time. And they're very honest with me. They say, Dr. Staley, I appreciate everything you're doing to make things better for me. But when I make this decision, you or no one else in this world is going to be able to stop me.
And you can.
And so those are the rare instances where someone is actually planning it. It's not
Not an immediate threat,
yeah.
but it's like when
and
I'm
it's
done,
not-
I'm done.
And it's not one of those things that someone
Wow.
is irrationally just kind of making a decision and acting on it impulsively, which is what a lot of people do.
Probably the vast majority.
The vast majority, yeah. And so with those two, and again, I've only had it happen twice in my career,
Yeah.
and
Which is how long?
20 years.
20 something years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've been a psychiatrist for right at just under 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's happened twice that I've had people tell me that. And the first time I heard it, it freaked me out. I actually went and had to have some of my own supervision. I had to go talk to
Really?
someone who'd been doing this longer than I had.
yeah. Yeah.
And say, hey, how do you
Sometimes you
handle
got to
this?
seek the wisdom out. Yeah.
How do you handle this?
Yeah.
This most recent time that it happened, I'm like, okay, and I just know that at some point in time, this patient will make a decision regardless of what I decide. I can do the best care that I want,
Yeah.
and when they decide that
Yeah.
I can't do anything.
But that's out of your control.
Yeah, it's out of my control.
There's
And-
nothing you can do.
And I don't take that personally. If someone like that makes that call,
Sure.
I was lucky. I've been a very, very lucky individual over the course of my medical career. I have not lost that many patients as a whole. I did not lose my first patient to suicide until I was in my current clinic.
Which started when?
6 years ago.
Okay.
So I had been.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had been 14. Actually, I was closer to 16 years before this individual committed suicide.
Wow.
I had been almost 16 years of a career before I had my first suicide.
How did that affect you?
Honestly, it was hard. Harder than I expected it to be. And unfortunately, just because of...
You wouldn't expect that to be hard?
Well, and what I was going to say is, unfortunately, I can't completely discuss it just because of of regulations.
Yeah, fair.
But it was harder because it hit closer. That one was closer to home.
Okay.
Than if it had been someone else.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that particular loss was a much closer... I had even though me and that individual did not have that close of a tie, the story was enough that it hit me close.
Yeah, okay.
Compared to if it was someone else that did.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of where that's at.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of... So that first one was really hard.
Yeah.
And I've had, honestly...
How do you cope with that?
You want the real answer or the...
well, I assume the real answer is beer.
The real answer is beer, yes. I mean, I drink... Actually, it's bourbon, if you want to know the real answer.
You're a bourbon guy.
I'm a bourbon guy. I'm not I drink a lot of beer, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if I was to actually have my choice of what I'm going to drink, it's going to be bourbon.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But, I mean, realistically, I mean, if you look at the real answer, it's... What did I do to drown it out at the moment? It was alcohol.
Yeah, sure.
But after I got past I need to drown this out, and how do I actually process it emotionally, it was a lot of, for me, rationalization, and then going at and looking over and saying, what could I have done differently? So rationalizing.
Yeah.
And realizing that I didn't miss anything. I did everything that I could do.
And sometimes it's just not control.
It's out of my control.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was honestly golf. Going in the golf range, so hitting golf balls, and or going to the gun range and shooting targets. Those are my two biggest stress relievers. If I really want to kind of get something off my mind, I used to call it black powder therapy.
Those are
So
those are actually, I had a night recently where I was just in a rage. Like there was nothing that I could do to calm this.
Yeah. And
I just went out. I took some guns and some ammo, and I just went out shooting for 30 minutes. And it's good therapy.
See, that's out here where you're at. That's one of the nice things. You have that ability to kind of do that.
Yeah.
Even though I'm out in the county, I don't really have the ability to.
You're in county, really?
Yeah, no, we're not in city limits where we're at. We're actually out in the county.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I would have thought y'all were in city limits.
No, we're actually a pretty reasonable ways away from any of the city limits from anywhere that we're at.
Huh.
So
but you still got people close.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
where you don't want to be like an annoyance.
Well, I live in a neighborhood. I live in a subdivision that's outside of town.
Yeah.
And the other problem is that honestly, the only safe direction to shoot is towards another subdivision.
Yeah.
It's a good little ways away, and the likelihood of anything actually hitting them is small.
Yeah.
But it's still, you basically have to shoot.
Well, if you ever want to come out here and shoot, you're more than welcome.
Cool.
We I was real stingy with the bullets for about 4 years, just because you couldn't get
them
anything.
Yeah.
And if you could, it was pirated at insane rates. And then I finally built back a stock of ammo, and then
I haven't even tried
it was like a month ago. The kids were like, "Man, can we do some shooting, Dad?" I was like, "Yes, let's do it." So we went shooting, and then they go, "Can we do it again next weekend?" I was like, "Yeah, we'll do it." So we went out shooting. And then I realized, man, when you shoot, you go through a lot of boxes. Because it had been a long time since we'd really gone out and just shot, other than just, hey, we'll shoot a cylinder or a mag here.
Yeah,
just do this. But I just let them have free. Shoot as much as you want. And now I'm like, God, I got $200.
Oh well,
ammo
I
to
mean,
restock here.
Even before COVID, it was nothing unusual. I would go to the range and I was 300, 400 rounds in,
Yeah,
and that's just me.
yeah.
I could sit there and run through 300, 400 rounds in a single range setting.
Would you mix up your firearm, or do you like shooting with one thing?
I have I usually rotate between 3, if not 4 guns.
Okay.
So
Because I've got 5 or 6 at least
Yeah.
different calibers that I like to play through, and
I only have 2 different calibers. I have a 40 and I have several 9s. I do have a 223 that I also have occasionally that I'll play with, but
well, that's the one
that one
probably will save you one day
yeah,
if you need it.
But the problem with the 9 is actually Holly it's her gun. It's probably my favorite gun that I have in my entire house. I can't shoot as many rounds through it because it actually uses the off gassing as the recoil.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so it uses the off gassing, and so it gets hot
Yeah.
fast.
Does she shoot?
She doesn't shoot anywhere near as much as I do, and I don't think she's picked up the gun probably in 6 years, 5
See,
years.
Julie didn't want anything to do with it.
I used to take her to the range with me occasionally.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't often. I always had to. She had a much better aim than I did, but her stance. Oh man, I don't know how she hit the target.
Man, it's funny because it takes all kinds. Like Theo can't close one eye.
Yeah.
He still can't.
Oh wow.
But he has found ways to
make it work.
And it's like, I don't know how you're doing it, but if that is what works for you, because we were trying eye patches, we were trying all these things, and I was asking because I know a lot of hunters and shooter. I'm asking advice, and and the best advice I got was a 80-year-old man said, "Let him figure it out. He will figure out a way that works for him.
Yeah,
just let him do it."
We go out and. Marshall has a BB gun. He has his bow and arrow. He has his slingshot. Has he got anything else? I think that's all he has.
That you know of. Yeah.
That I know. Well, that doesn't count the knives.
My boys might be sending stuff home within
whatever.
None of us know. I don't know.
Whatever. If they have, it's fine.
I'm just saying. I'm not responsible. Well, technically, I am.
You are
legally responsible.
Legally responsible, but we're fine. But yeah, he's a good kid. He knows to ask. He's actually only shot something bigger than a BB gun or a couple of times, and it's always.
It might be fun to just all of us.
Let's just bring them out here
just
and
go out here.
Shoot.
I've got a spot right over here. We're shooting down into a holler.
Well, let's plan on doing that one weekend.
I think that'd be super fun, man. Get Marshall some experience with some bigger stuff.
He's shot a 9 a couple of times.
Has he?
Yeah, he shot his mom's 9 actually.
How'd he do?
Really good for considering.
Well, how do you do with like the recoil? Like,
that's the thing about this particular gun. It has almost zero recoil in it because of the way it's set up. That's why I love this gun.
Yeah,
it's a little Walther, is what it is.
You just take that one for yourself and get the wife something.
I've got my 40 is a Sig. I've got a couple of Glocks, and I've got Holly has the Walther. And honestly, out of all the ones I have, I wish I only had Walther in my.
Really?
Like her Walther.
I've never owned a Walther.
It's the only one of my guns that does not have an issue with jamming. So, both of my Glocks.
I have heard that.
Both of my Glocks have issues after you've ran. So, after I've ran 40, 50 rounds through them, both of my Glocks will start to have jam issues.
Well, you hope in a real life scenario you're not.
Well, if I'm having to run more than 40 or 50 rounds,
you're fucked.
There's a problem if I'm doing that in real life. So that's why I'm not worried about it. But the fact that if I'm at the range and I'm running more than 40, 50 rounds through it, it's beginning to have issues.
Yeah.
And my Sig, it's actually more like 20.
But the Walther,
I can run
just smooth
150, 200 rounds through it. And
I have heard nothing but good stuff.
And the only reason that I have to stop shooting the Walther is the gun gets so hot because it's using the off gassing to recoil,
right.
And so that's hot and it sets the gun ablaze eventually.
Yeah.
So
I actually exploded a. I'm trying to
think Cimarron, and there's another brand, Uberti.
Okay.
They basically make a lot of reproductions of pre-1900,
Yeah.
so a lot of revolvers,
Yeah.
stuff, age period.
Old things, yeah.
But I had oh shit, I'm trying to think of the general name of this gun. It's the one where you pull the release and it drops down.
Yeah.
Schofield.
Yeah,
Schofield.
thank you. I would
but
not
I
have
was-
gotten there anytime soon.
But they did it for cavalry, so you could be riding a horse, you'd be holding the reins, you could shoot your cylinder out, and then
Click
pull
it.
a button down, shuck
Chunk
the
it.
casings, and then drop.
Yeah.
So it's basically made for one hand shooting, mostly
Yeah.
cavalry riders, but. And I don't know how much they're putting into these reproductions, like as far as quality, but I was shooting just fast, kind of rapid fire,
Yeah.
shooting out of a cylinder, and it's a single action, so cock and shoot,
Yeah.
and it heated up so bad that the barrel exploded. And
wow.
thankfully, I'm always wearing eye and ear protection.
Yeah, no, it's-
but
it's
I had
a
a
necessity.
splinter of metal cut so deep into that glass, there was a gouge right in front of the eyeball.
Oh,
It was one
wow.
of those things that it would have blinded me.
Yeah.
And I had a hell of a time getting any acknowledgement from the company because I was like, "Hey,
This is a
this
problem,
thing,
yeah.
And they wanted me to send ammunition in. They were like, "Oh, well, you're probably shooting like plus P or something." I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, man, I was shooting it fast, but
Yeah.
that shouldn't blow up in
It
my
shouldn't
hand.
blow up in your hand, no. I mean,
but-
unless you're just doing it excessively.
But
I mean,
again, it's a recreation of an 1840s, 1850s
Yeah.
gun. Was there a problem with, the way the gas expanded out
Mhm.
in that model?
Right.
Possibly. I
Possibly.
don't know, but it certainly. I
no,
don't shoot that one as much anymore. I
Uh-uh.
did get a replacement.
Oh, did you?
but-
Okay.
yeah, they finally sent me one.
no,
It was
I-
a long ordeal, but
I
and they're neat guns. I
Are-
mean,
yeah,
they're so cool. You just
I've seen them. Growing up, we had hunting rifles, we had shotguns, things like that, but handguns were not something that my dad had.
really.
I had a friend of mine that his dad let us go out and one time shoot his. I'm wanting to say it was a 40 or a 45 that he had as a preteen, and that's the only time until I became an adult that I shot a handgun. I'd never shot handguns until I became an adult.
I guess that's probably true for me too. It was all hunting. It was
Yeah.
all
It
rifles.
was all
or
rifles and shotguns. And stuff like
shotguns.
that.
Yeah.
That's all I knew growing up.
We just didn't have
So-
experience with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true for me too. And growing up here, I had a grandpa. He had 400 acres up on Mount Olive out Elkins, and
Yeah.
I mean it was deer camp, and it
Yeah,
was all
yeah.
you had all from anywhere from a 30-30 up to a 7 mag and shotguns and all that stuff. But yeah, it was mostly rifles. I just
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of handgun experience until I became an adult.
Honestly, because my dad just he was more of a bow hunter, and
Was he?
Yeah, he always was. And-
What did he hunt from a stand, or was
Yeah.
he one of those stalker
no,
guys?
he was a
that-
stand hunter, and so honestly, I don't even know that I hunted with a rifle until I met Holly's at the time stepdad. Was probably the first time I've actually hunted with a rifle was with him.
So you were bow hunting.
Yeah, I was bow hunting most of the time in my growing up.
Have you ever heard of these guys that
Stalk
hunt?
Yeah,
I knew one guy that did this, and very successful. But it's a wild deal.
It is. I knew one guy that I met several years ago. I'm trying to remember where I met him at, but met him somewhere, and he would talk about the fact that he did the stalk hunting, but he stalk hunted supposedly with a knife.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
How do you get that? What is he, an elf?
I don't know how you got that close to a deer it was.
I mean, that's some Bear Grylls shit right there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm like, how in the crap do you?
But think about it. Say Russia gets an EMP over America and knocks out our electric.
Yeah.
Now, right now, we got tons of deer that come through here every night.
Oh yeah.
But when everybody on this road is trying to get those deer,
Food's
Uh-huh.
going to get scarce real
Quick.
fast.
Yep.
And I think people think, like, oh, if the electricity goes out, within a month or two, things will get wild. It'll be within a week.
Oh, it won't take long. No.
Because your refrigeration's gone.
Yep.
So your food's going to go bad
Mhm.
immediately. And you might have a lot of food, but if it goes bad...
If it goes bad, it's not food.
then it's not food. And then what I think...
Got to learn how to preserve it if you want it to save.
And then if you kill... Let's just say we got cattle around here, right?
Yeah.
Well, if we're hungry and we kill a cow
Yeah.
to eat, how do you preserve that meat?
Right.
Because it's going to be a lot more meat than you can handle for one meal.
It ends up being that you kill that cow and everyone in the area eats on it.
Right. You
Or
need to
you-
have a community. Well, that's
Or
right.
you learn how to preserve it.
With salt,
Well,
and
yeah.
you can do that way. But
Salt,
like
smoke, things
that's
like
why I think communism does work. You just have to have a small enough
You got to have a small enough number.
set
Yeah.
to where everybody shares resources. If the government's
Well-
controlling it, I don't trust it. But
Go-
if you in a real community,
I mean, go back and look at the initial settlers of the West.
oh, absolutely,
I mean, those were communal settings.
they
You
were.
helped.
Yes.
You helped your peers.
Well, when you look at the founding of America, it really communism was rampant.
Yeah,
Not the
it
way
was.
we
No,
think
no,
of
no,
it.
It's not, no.
But-
It wasn't taking from one group to give to another.
Right.
It was
Everyone
worked-
shared
yeah.
resources. Everybody helped with raising the kids,
Mhm.
or there might be one mom who taught the children in
Yeah.
the schoolhouse.
This was the schoolhouse mom. This was the dad that knew how to thatch the roof.
Sure.
This was the mom that knew how to make clothes. This was the dad who knew how to
lay bricks,
lay bricks or hunt
or butcher,
yeah,
or whatever it is.
yeah,
but
and that's what
they
happened.
were
is you-
small communities,
you worked
and
together.
everybody had a role to play.
Yeah, no,
and that's where it works.
Yes.
Like you said, when you're saying one person's making the decisions of where it goes,
Uh-huh.
that's when it becomes
that's when it
a
becomes a problem. Yeah,
But it does work. It's like a family,
yeah.
for instance.
A good family
A nuclear family
is going to work.
is not a
together.
democracy. Not in my
it's-
house. It's not.
No, it's not in my house either.
It's not. I mean, there are things we'll vote on, that are fun, but like when
yeah.
it comes down to how we're raising you kids, you don't get a vote.
There's not a vote. That's a
It's a
Mom and I
dictatorial-
Mom and I make that decision, and sometimes one or the other of us makes the decision over the other one. So,
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you got to pick your battles
Yeah.
on everything, but
Yeah.
yeah. So, how long have we been going?
I don't
We've
know.
been going a while. Because I wanted to ask you. Where's my? Okay, we're right at 2 hours. I'll ask one last question.
All right.
So, as a dad,
Yeah.
and we did talk about this last time again, but
Yeah.
people get a kick out of us talking about this on the podcast because I don't have daughters, and so I'm grateful that I don't have daughters because I prayed to not have daughters. Every time Julie got pregnant, I was like, please give me a son, please
Yeah.
give me a son. And the reason was because I was once a teenage boy.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
And knowing how I was as a teenage boy, I did not want a million of me trying to...
Trying to get with.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know how I was, so if I have a daughter, I will never have her above the ground or outside of a cage. So what has
That
that,
has-
been
man,
like? Because
that-
your daughter's dating now.
She is. I mean,
And that, to
has
me-
been hard for me.
I
So,
bet.
The first guy that she dated,
Well, how old was she when she did her first date?
15.
Okay.
And when I say dated, they didn't actually go anywhere. They actually knew each other from church. Is how they knew each other.
Okay.
And they had gone to summer camp together through church.
Yeah.
And they actually worked to set up another couple of kids inside the church into a relationship. And in the process of working together, and
Yeah.
that evidently decided that they wanted to
Matchmakers
date.
over here.
Yeah, they were matchmakers. So she started dating him, and he still to this day, I don't think he can look me in the eye.
You got a bounty on this guy?
No, he's terrified of me, and I didn't do anything. So they broke up. He decided he didn't like some of the rules, some of the expectations that were there. Because it got to the point where he wanted to come and hang out with Haley Ann, and he wanted to things like that. But his mom had a rule that he couldn't date. His mom and dad are divorced, and he was living with his mom, and so he wasn't allowed to date. And so he was lying to his mom, and we would actually meet him down the road and pick him up at the park.
Knowing he was lying to them all.
Yeah, knowing that he was lying to them.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that, I think, twice. And then we basically set down a rule that said no more. If this is going to happen, you have to be honest with your mom.
Yeah.
And
Not that it's a fair rule, but that is your parents.
right,
and
that's your
their-
parents' rule. Yeah,
Right.
And so after about 2 times of doing this, we said, okay, look, this is not, no more. If you want this to happen, you have to let your mom know.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so
I wouldn't feel comfortable with that either.
And so
After
he,
a couple of, yeah.
he then decided to break up with Haley Ann, which actually was fine with her. She's like, great, sees me from having to break up with you.
Sometimes it works out.
Sometimes it works out, yeah. And they broke up, and I think it was literally like a week later he started calling her and bothering her and wanting her back and all this. And it got to the point that one of the youth leaders, she actually had a conversation with him, and she said, block him.
Yeah.
Just completely block him from... And so, that's hard as a dad to, how do I navigate that with the daughter? Because she didn't want anything to do with him. I could have very easily gone and just threatened to beat the kid.
Yeah, but you want to let them solve their own.
Yeah, and so she figured it out. They're now back to being good friends.
Yeah.
He won't still look at me.
Well, you talking about the long game earlier.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, God, if you give me a daughter, I am in prison in the long game. No matter what.
Yeah.
And that
No.
can't be good.
That's not, yeah. And so, she's back to dating another guy now. And, the guy she's dating now, I wanted to not like him so bad. Just because... he's
Still the
dating-
same guy.
No, it's a different guy. This is a different guy that she's
No,
dating.
the one that she's been dating for a while.
Oh, yeah, she's been dating this guy for 6
I know
or
who
8
it is.
months. Yeah,
I don't wanna name
no,
names.
we're not
Yeah.
going to name names.
She's been with him for a minute.
6-8 months, something
6
like
months,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, something along those lines. So,
Yeah.
they met last fall in a play, actually, is where they met. Yeah.
I remember.
I think Max was in that play, actually.
He was. I got to hear the story of how they met.
Okay. So, there's a lot more to that story, but
I'm sure.
I did not want to like this kid.
Oh, I wouldn't want to like anybody dating my daughter.
Well, and the first time that I met this kid was at her 16th birthday.
Okay.
And
Would this have been after that play?
It was actually during
the run?
It was either right after or just before. When did that play show?
Because she hadn't been driving that long.
That play may have been... I think they were rehearsing that play, but hadn't had that play. Because I think that play ended up playing in January.
Was it?
Yeah, I think they rehearsed in December and January.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I can't keep up with their rehearsal schedules anymore.
Sounds good enough to me.
But he...
So you didn't want to like this
I didn't
guy.
want... But he was... At her birthday party, he just was... He was a goober. I'll be nice. I'll say the nice words. He was a goober.
Right.
And I did not like him at her birthday party.
Was he
And
trying to be somebody that
he was trying to be someone that he
wasn't?
was. He was
Yeah.
trying to be someone he wasn't.
Which is hard to diagnose.
It was and
the first time you.
The problem was it was his first show with Arts Live. He didn't know anyone. I mean, literally, I think that they had known each other for like 2 weeks when this birthday party happened, if I remember correctly. It may be not even that long.
He's probably peacocking a little
and
bit.
he was,
Yeah.
and he was trying to figure out where to fit in within the group
Yeah,
and all of that, and it just did not go well. And I did not like him. And then she was actually terrified to ask me, was it all right if they started dating?
Yeah.
Because she would not agree to start dating him until I said yes.
You can't
So
ask for much better
she
situation than that
actually
if you're
came,
you.
Yeah, she actually came to me and to ask, is it okay if I start seeing him?
Yeah.
Before she did. She said if I'd have said no, she wasn't going to. So
You gotta count yourself.
Oh, I count myself extremely blessed with my child. And
that
again,
could have gone. Oh,
it could have gone way south.
Yeah.
But she, I said that's fine, and I set some ground rules on things,
Right.
and some expectations, stuff along those lines. And not long after they'd started dating, we had gone on vacation, Holly and I and the kids, and we were coming back, and it was going to be like 10, 11 o'clock at night that we got back.
Okay.
We're on the way, and we get a telephone call that he's bringing dinner to have at our house so that we would have food when we got home. And I'm like, how do you hate the kid when he's so worried about her that he's bringing... He cooked a meal. He
cooked it.
He cooked it himself.
So he didn't pick up takeout.
He didn't pick up takeout. He cooked it himself. He planned to get someone in his family to... Because he wasn't driving at the time. He's a little older than Haley, but he wasn't driving.
Yeah, I know about some of that.
And he got someone in his family to drive him to our house, drop off the food, so it was sitting there at our house when we showed up. And they'd only been dating for 6 weeks, I think, at the time. 8 weeks, something like that. And I'm like, dude, I can't hate you after this. There's nothing that I can... And he's done nothing but been great to her since.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, never once. So...
Because, see, having no experience with this, I would be thinking, oh, you're making dinner to impress the family, huh?
Well, I wanted to think that, but
Right.
I knew better than that with this kid.
But I'm just an asshole. So, like,
then,
that would be my...
This summer, he had done something, and it... Honestly, this is a whole other issue, but he had done something that got himself grounded.
Yeah.
And it really didn't deserve being grounded, in my opinion, but he did something to get grounded. And his family, when they ground him from Haley Ann. He's not allowed to see her.
Okay.
And so he was not allowed to have contact with her for a week.
All right.
So what he did instead is he went and he bought 7 rubber ducks. My daughter loves rubber ducks.
She got a Jeep?
No, she doesn't. It started off with her cruising. There's cruise ducks. It's about the same as the Jeep ducks. So,
all right.
But she loves rubber ducks, and so he went and he bought 7 rubber ducks, and every day he showed up where he knew she was going to be at, whether it was at work or at school, or work or at church or somewhere else, and he left a duck on her vehicle.
All right. That's pretty smooth.
I know, and it's just like, how do you hate a kid like that?
Yeah, like that's...
As much as you want to, as a dad, you don't want to like your daughter's
sweet.
boyfriend.
I'm still trying to hate him. I'm trying to.
I've
break
quit.
through your.
I don't know. I've quit.
I
quit
can't bring you back.
No, there's
All right.
there's no hate in
It's
this
too
kid.
done. He's done a good job.
He has. I mean, Holly and I kind of talk a lot about how there's a lot of similarities between their relationship and ours, and I said, no, they cannot. I don't want them to be together forever because I think she's too young for that. I mean, my daughter is 16. She's not old enough.
You said you were how old when you got married?
We got married at 25.
25-ish. Yeah. I was 26. She was 23.
Yeah.
But my grandfather had my dad when he was 20. My dad had me when he was 20. I was 28 when I had Max.
Yeah.
I was the one who kind of threw it. But
yeah.
You can go back to the beginning of our family history, and it's 20 years on the dot between every one of us.
I mean, you know, my parents, my mom was 18 when they got married.
Yeah.
My dad was 17.
Wow.
So, oddly enough, my mom turned 18 at the beginning of the month. They got married the middle of the month. My dad turned 18 the end of the month.
Okay.
So they within a month,
Yeah.
they had 2 18th birthdays and a wedding.
Yeah.
And so for me to wait until I was older than that was kind of different. My brother was married at 19.
But then again, if you go back in history, you needed to.
Yeah.
You had to have children quickly to help with the family chores. It was a necessity.
It was a necessity.
Now,
not anymore.
We don't even have to have children if we don't want to.
No.
And that's why you're seeing, I mean, the child, I don't know the exact numbers, but if you look at the graph, the
it's
rate
down.
of childbirth has
It's gone way, way, way down.
pretty dramatically down.
Yeah, it has. So, but no. So having a daughter has been a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that she was the first, because if Marshall had been the first, there would not have been a second. I can promise you there would not have been
I
a
want to
second.
show that clip to Marshall in 20 years.
That's fine.
Hey, Marshall, I got to check this out.
He already knows that.
He probably does.
I'm more than happy to tell him the fact that if he had been the first, there would not have been a second.
Oh no! If
So,
Theo had been the first, we'd have been done. Probably.
yeah.
That doesn't mean we don't love Theo.
I don't know.
We
I love
Theo,
my son.
but
Don't-
he requires some eagle eye.
Yeah. Again, I love my son. I
Of
love my
course
daughter
you do.
too. But no, I would not have a second one if it was him first.
My mom referred to Marshall as our part-time son today.
That's about right.
I thought that was funny. She's like,
You know-
"So is this the part-time son?" I was like, "Yeah, sometimes."
That was kind of growing up. I had a friend like that. all
Yeah,
the way through.
yeah.
About the age that Marshall
Yeah,
was.
that's
Marshall
the
and Martha
age.
are. And the reason that my friendship like that kind of ended was an unfortunate reason, but it was one of those things that every weekend we were basically at one or the other's houses.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I mean,
I
it was
remember that.
It was nothing unusual, and the fact that I go back and I think through my childhood, and a lot of the stuff that Marshall gets to do out here with you guys.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what me and my friend in
Yeah.
5th and 6th grade did.
100%.
I would come out to his house, and they had a large amount of land.
Yeah.
And we would go and we would literally backpack out and camp.
Yeah.
We had a campsite built
Yeah.
that we would go and hike to. And
Theo's got one
yeah,
built.
They've got
They've
one.
camped
Yeah,
there.
They've camped
Julia
there.
went with them, but
Yeah. No, I knew they did, but I mean, they've got the spot that they go over here,
Yeah.
and but we had the same kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember the day that we were actually out and stepped on the rattlesnake unintentionally.
Somebody get bit?
No, actually, we had a gun with us, and
Somebody disposed
someone
of the
disposed.
rattlesnake?
Yeah,
Did y'all eat it?
Nah, it just stayed in the woods, so we didn't quite go that far. But it was just the fact that we were out walking, and
Oh yeah.
rattlesnake got stepped on unintentionally, and luckily we had something to take care of, because I don't know that we would have been able to get away if
Right.
I think someone would have gotten bit otherwise. So,
Marshall's one of those kids who just loves being outside. Like,
oh yeah,
he's not one that wants to come in here. Like, my kids will want to show him video. Hey, come watch this video game, and he's like, "No, I want to be outside."
yeah, no.
I'm like, listen to Marshall.
Marshall does not
Get out there.
The extent of the video games that Marshall has had experience with is Mario Kart, Mario Party, Minecraft, and Zelda.
Are y'all maybe a little more strict with the game so he didn't have as much experience with them, to where he doesn't maybe depend on them as much as our kids?
It's a bit of the fact that we're a little strict on them.
Well, that's what I
But
mean.
also
like,
the fact that I'm not a gamer. I could
Right.
care less.
right.
And Holly's not a gamer. And there's a whole other reason.
And Haley's obviously
And
not going to
Haley's-
be a gamer.
Yeah, that's not her thing. If you want art, talk to my daughter. But
Right.
games, no.
I think I was always a gamer. And so then when Max started young, I started him on 8-bit stuff, like the original Mario
Yeah.
and Mega Man. And like, if you want to be a gamer, here's how we started. It was like all he was allowed to play was 8-bit stuff
Yeah.
for a long time. But we still have our hour-a-day rule.
yeah.
If you get school done and everything's done, you got some time after dark, maybe we'll let
Right.
you have a little
Well,
more. But it's maximum 2 days, 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
Even on weekends,
Yeah.
it's not.
Well,
we're not going to have a day of just playing
No,
video
my,
games.
my recommendations are hour a day, Monday through Thursday, 2 hours Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That's
So 10 hours a week.
That's probably pretty
And
close to
you
what we
can,
do.
and
Yeah.
you can earn an additional hour a day. And that additional hour is earned through chores. It's earned through being outside and playing. It's
Very
earned
similar
through
to what we
reading.
do.
It's
Yep.
earned through creativity. It's earned.
Yep.
So you earn it through doing something
Yep.
extra.
But
and then
but it's
you get
also
it.
not a guaranteed hour. Like you
No,
can
no,
lose
no.
it just as easily.
Yeah, you can lose it just as easily. No.
But what I love hearing what you're saying is like, even at the max, it's a 2 hour cap.
Oh yeah, no. Two hours during
2
the
hours
week
a
and
day.
3 hours on the weekends.
is max, absolutely. But there's parents who have no rules on any day of the week.
No.
And these kids are screwed for life because they're addicted to that dopamine or whatever it is. And so when they're in a position where they're going to have to go to a job or whatever it is, and they can't just be doing that.
Yeah, no, it's
going to be a tough time for them. I think parents think, oh, let them have freedom, Well, kids aren't of a maturity level to make good decisions.
No, they're
until
not.
you're about 25, you're a doctor. The brain stops forming it.
22 to 25, depending on the individual, is
But
where your full executive functioning develops.
Right. So at that point, do what you want.
Yeah.
But I obviously can't control you between 18 and 25. But when you're here, my job as a parent is to get you as healthy and ready to go when you're 18. And by letting you play video games all day, I'm doing you a disservice.
Yeah. My job is to get you ready to live life.
Right.
My job is not to to be your friend. It's not to be anything but get you ready.
But I feel like social media is one of those things where it's out there.
Yeah.
And so, what I've been doing is having, Walt, why don't you run my podcast social media?
Yeah.
So you know how to, because you're not going to be doing crazy shit on my account or you die.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's here's how you do it responsibly. And so most of the stuff that I post is through Walt or it's but he's doing it through my official
account. Yeah.
Podcasting account. So I want you to know how to do it. And you can't have your own yet. But if you can learn to use this responsibly, and then maybe we'll talk.
Haley Ann did not get her first social media account until last fall.
But she's 15.
She's 15.
At that point.
And
Walter's 11, 12.
Well, right, but the only reason that she got her first social media account last fall was because she was beginning to try to start selling some art.
So using it as a tool.
We're using it as a tool.
There you go. Yeah,
and so
there's a purpose for it.
She decided that she didn't want to do that path, and so she's using her social media for personal purposes now.
Right.
But she started off, it was a business for her, effectively. That's awesome. It was a chance for her to put her art out there. It was a chance for her to try to sell some things indirectly, and she did.
Well, there's a lot of people who just say, let's do away with social media entirely.
Oh yeah, no,
but it's like anything. It's like a gun or a hammer. Like it's a
great tool.
You can build a house with it. You can kill somebody with it.
Yeah.
But for me, I would have 0 views on my podcast without social media.
Oh yeah, no, social media.
Because nobody even knows it's out there unless you're subscribed and the notifications are turned on.
Yeah.
I post every time I put up a podcast, and then people know, hey, it's out there. They can go listen to it. That's a tool.
And then someone can share it.
Right.
And then it just kind of grows that way.
Right.
And so, honestly, Haley Ann last year put up a painting or a picture that she painted and drew that I ended up sharing off of her social media. And someone that I knew said, I want that. Will she sell it?
Really?
Yeah. And at the time, her goal was not to sell anything in that series. That was an entire series that she was doing. And I said, previously, this is kind of what has been offered to her. And she said no to. So just know that. So what's your offer? And she said, this is what I'm offering. And so I said, okay, let me shoot a message to my daughter and see what she says. And I shot a message to her, and she said, yes, please. This person actually put a price on it that if I was Haley, I wouldn't have passed it up. As a 15-year-old,
sure,
suddenly someone offering you the kind of money that they were offering, I'm like,
what a cool experience for her, though.
Yeah. And then a little bit later, she actually went and did a couple of fall festivals. One of them was actually through the homeschool group that the kids were part of last year. But we had done one before that, actually. And she had people come up to her and say, okay, if you were to take a commission, what would you charge? And it was a business owner who asked her that. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't able to answer that. And he actually walked her through how to make a decision on
that's a good lesson.
It was. She didn't use it the way she should have, in my opinion. But,
well, yeah. But
So-
still, that's good free advice
Mhm.
from somebody that
It was, yeah,
is in that.
yeah. So,
But I also feel like when you're young, you don't fully get the context of
Well,
life.
her
So when
problem
somebody,
her problem was that she didn't feel like shit was actually worth what they were saying it was worth. I mean, this person actually told her that.
well, a lot of art is kind of a scam, in my opinion.
Well,
like,
but
people
she,
pay ridiculous.
well, I
sums.
mean, let's not even. Don't come to my house and so I can show you what some of mine are, because I have a lot of art that people would tell you is, why did you spend that much for it?
Right.
I mean, we won't even talk about the number of dollars that I have in my house.
We won't talk about it.
But
How
this-
much?
At my house, at least 100.
Paintings?
No,
Or-
K.
Oh my! I was joking. You shouldn't have revealed that.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Yeah, at least. So
So that's like a thing of yours.
yeah, no, that
You
we
like-
actually collect art. So
Oh wow. Couldn't you just go to Google Images and just print it off and put it in a frame?
no,
Didn't
because
work?
actually one of my favorite artists, he works on metal.
Oh.
So
Now I actually do want to come see. Maybe we do a
It's-
remote pod just doing
yeah,
showing your
yeah.
art collection.
yeah, it's fun. We can
Now
do
I
that.
want to see this.
So the guy that I collect most, actually, all of his art is on metal.
Where's he out of?
He's out of California,
Okay.
so he's a.
So you ordering pieces?
So when I first started collecting this guy, I was actually on a cruise ship. Actually, I found something I liked of his. I bought it from a cruise ship. I spent so much money on the cruise ship that the art company invited me to an auction. And this guy was one of the featured artists.
Okay.
And so I actually got to sit down and have dinner with him.
No shit.
Yeah, no shit. He actually sat at my table and had dinner with me.
That's crazy.
We had dinner. We had to meet him, and he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
I would love to get to hang out with him again.
Get him
and-
down here on the pod.
He's too big for that now.
He's too big
yeah,
for us.
I mean, I'll be honest. One of the art pieces that I bought that at the time was probably about $100 what I bought it for. I can sell it in the aftermarket right now for probably about $750.
Man,
And that's where he's at right now. He's a big enough artist right now in the art community that a piece that I bought 6 years ago, I can get seven.
But
times
you're
the
not
price
buying
for it.
them as investments.
No.
You're
no.
buying them as a
I'm buying
hobbyist.
them. I
or
buy them because, and
you
so
like the work.
one of the first things that ever someone told me about buying art was, do not buy art as an investment. It is an absolute atrocious investment.
Right. I've heard that as
You,
well.
you don't buy art for an investment piece. You buy art because you like it.
Sure.
And so Holly and I have taken that to heart.
Right.
We may have, I don't think we actually have 100K in the house. It's a little less. It's less than that, but it's more than it should be.
You're right.
And we have taken that statement to heart, though, that we only bring in pieces that speak to us for some reason. So if you were to actually come in and look at what we have, it's eclectic. I mean, I have everything from Peter Max to Thomas Kincaid to Tim Yankee to, I mean,
You got the gamut.
I got the gambit. So I've got things that I've got a French artist, Linda Lecomte, that's at the house. I have a piece there. So I mean, I've got pieces that are all across the board, and so my house does not look cohesive in any way, shape, or form in
Yeah.
our art. But it's always something that speaks to us. We go in and we
It's
say
interesting.
that we like that, and this is why.
Yeah.
And I don't buy it unless I like it.
Well, it has to resonate.
It has it's not
And
because
if you're not doing it for an investment,
Yeah.
you're doing
you're
it as
doing
something
yeah,
that
doing it
speaks
'cause
to
it
you.
speaks to me. And now I will tell you, there's a couple of the pieces that I have that I bought that at the time they spoke to me, I would gladly part ways with them right now.
Could you? Is there a way to like
Oh yeah, I
offload
could sell.
that
Oh
kind
yeah, I
of
could
stuff?
offload them if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I don't think I could get out of them. I think those particular paintings I could not get what I paid for them back.
But there's a market for that
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Yeah.
obviously.
Well, you stop and think about the fact that the ones that I would, honestly, of what I have on my walls right now that I would want to get rid of, they're Disney pieces. And so, yeah, I could get rid of those.
Yeah, certainly.
Because they're just because they're Disney.
Just because, yeah.
Yeah. And
It's not some wild off the wall random
right, they're
shit.
not just some randomness.
Yeah.
I've got some pieces at the house that, you know, could I get rid of them if I wanted to? Yeah, am I going to get anything out of them? Definitely not. There's an artist that we used to collect that's out of Kansas City that I was paying like $60, $70 a print for them. If I was to go back and try to sell them, I might get $5 for them.
Right.
But I didn't collect them to do anything other than the fact that I liked them.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of interesting though, because like the two things I like collecting are guns and guitars.
Yeah.
And those both appreciate.
Yeah.
For the most part. Like
the
if
most
you're
part,
buying
yeah.
a quality piece.
Yeah.
Like if I'm buying a shitty piece,
Well-
you know, but if I'm getting a quality guitar, like everything I got up there is either Fender or Gibson,
Yeah,
and they're
I
like
mean,
the
you
real
got-
deals. Like that's
yeah.
a Parker Nightfly. They don't even make those anymore. That thing up there is was a really rare. It's called an Erlewine Laser. My
Okay.
dad found it. I think he got that in '88 or '89.
Yeah.
Just because it had a smaller neck for me to play.
Yeah.
Well, turns out that it was a limited edition Johnny Winter signature guitar.
Oh, wow.
That they only made a few thousand of.
So it's...
And I went to, because it's a weird to play.
Yeah, I mean,
the tuning keys are at the bottom.
Like I say, I look, because my glasses are a little out of tune right now. It's just one of those. I'm like, I've wondered this entire time, where do you tune that from? But